Mr. Taylor, you're up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. First item is approval of your agenda. There are no bullpen items, no additions.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Any discussion? Call the question.
Explain for folks watching that our proactive IT department has added Mr. Marshall, who is coming onto the board in January. He'll be marked absent for each vote, and reference to him will not appear in the minutes. He is not yet a member of the Board of Supervisors. This is just the staff wanting to make sure he merges onto Nova's agenda.
Agenda approval of the agenda.
We'll just
Okay.
My apologies.
Mr. Skinner's having some issues with his as well. I only have one.
So I assume we're doing an aye vote?
Okay, roll call. All right,
If he just says aye, that'll be good enough.
all right, let's just, the ayes? Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it.
7 yes.
The floor computer, please. First item is your consent agenda. And your consent agenda for the evening is as follows. First item is approval of board minutes from November 9th, 2017. Second is approval of additional overtime funding. This is for the building office to complete increased permit and plan review activities at $35,882 for FY18. Third is approval of a purchase order with Atlantic Emergency Solutions. This is for the purchase of a 2018 Pierce Enforcer pumper at the cost of $676,515. Fourth is approval of a budget adjustment and appropriation of a grant award for the 2017 Rathman Challenge grant. We had honorable mention of $10,000. This will go to the Massaponics Wastewater Treatment Plant and the Livingston Composting Facility. Item 5 is de-appropriation of FY17 Highway Safety Grant Program selective enforcement funds for alcohol. We received a total grant of $48,862. $11,044 was utilized. There's $37,818 remaining. That goes back. These highway safety grants are for a limited period of time, limited purposes. Item 6 is de-appropriation of 2017 Highway Safety Grant Program selective enforcement funds for speed. The total grant was $51,000. There was $8,950 unutilized. Item 7 is reappointment of Mr. Mark Smith to the Economic Development Authority, the EDA, for a term that will expire March 31st of 2021. To explain briefly, his term on the EDA ends at the end of this calendar year. This is a reappointment that will also sync him with other appointments to the EDA. Item 8 is a resolution for Virginia State Parks, urging full funding and due consideration for our Lake Anna State Park. Item 9 is a Sheriff's Office request to reallocate funds from asset forfeiture to capital projects funds. This is for a specialty equipment vehicle carport or shed with an approximate cost of $100,000. It is funded entirely with forfeiture seizure funds. And item 10 is a Sheriff's Office request to convert 2 part-time personnel positions to 1 full-time position at a budget savings of $3,493 for FY 2018. These are civilian positions. And finally, item 11 are updates to the county's Public-Private Education Facilities and Infrastructure Act. That's PPEA of 2002 and PPTA of 1995. And these are updates to county policies. And that is your consent agenda.
Are there any items that a board member would like to be pulled off the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Any discussion? Call the question.
Very good.
Tell you what, let's just say the ayes. Aye. Any nays?
Aye.
Yeah, the ayes have it.
Next are public presentations. Amy, has anyone signed up for public presentations at this hour?
There is one citizen signed up to speak.
Public presentations are an opportunity for citizens to present matters you believe deserve the board's attention. These presentations are not part of a public hearing. Sign up to speak at each public hearing is separate. Public presentations are one-way comments from citizens to the board. This is not a forum for dialogue or debate. Sign up on the provided sign-up sheet and please print clearly. Come to the lectern when your name is called. Clearly state your name, address, and voting district for our record. Address your comments directly to the board. State whether you're speaking on your own behalf, in which case you'll have 3 minutes, or on behalf of a group, in which case you'll have 5 minutes. Public presentations shall not be used to address matters subject to public hearings or to make political campaign speeches, private advertisements, or personal attacks. And your written comments are always welcomed by the Board of Supervisors. Amy, who has signed up?
Heather LaBelle.
My name is Heather LaBelle. I reside at 888 Campers Lane, Ruther Glen, Virginia, 22546. My voting district is Madison County and Caroline. I'm representing myself. I've been with Spotsylvania County Schools for 17 years. I'm only one of 41 nationally board certified teachers, and I will have no choice but to leave if the tuition-free program for the children of out-of-county staff is cut. I have a master's degree and 18 years experience, but I only bring home $2,700 a month after taxes and insurance. Once I pay my mortgage, vehicle insurance, utilities, and internet, my daughter and I have only $650 to live off of. There's no money left for tuition. The county will also lose money if it cuts this program. The schools receive $1,443,000 in state and federal grant money for having this program. If the grant money goes away and the county charges teachers tuition, if every single out-of-county staff member stayed and paid the proposed tuition for each of the 225 out-of-district students, the county will still fall $313,000 short of what it now receives in state and federal grants. The county will lose a lot more than that because the majority of these employees will leave the county. Every member that I know using this program has said they will find employment elsewhere. Charging tuition will cost the county money and teachers. The proposed tuition also overcharges out-of-county staff for their children. The per pupil spending listed on the county is an average of every student in the county and is calculated by taking the total operating cost of the school and dividing it by the number of students. As with any average, this number is comprised of amounts well above and below that amount. For example, if one student costs $18,500 and another costs $3,500, their per pupil cost would be $11,000. The average cost of these 225 students is only a fraction of the average that represents all the students in the county. The current tuition-free policy already states that the county will not provide transportation for these students. These students do not require additional staff of fewer than 8 per school. The building principals must approve each of these students and can deny an application based on numbers. The lights and HVAC are already on. Besides flushing a toilet, the cost of these students on the schools is negligible. Gentlemen, please understand that most of these teachers will go elsewhere. They cannot afford tuition and need to be in the same county as their children. Having our children in the county allows us to be more involved in the schools and the community. We spend more time and money in this county than any other. We just can't afford to sleep here. I couldn't get a 2-bedroom apartment for what I pay for my house. However, this group of teachers is spending all their time and money here because our families are here. Since I brought my daughter in county, all my shopping, eating out, gas purchases, doctor's appointments, and even church takes place here. Before I had to rush to get home at the end of the school day, now I stay for tutoring and help with or attend extracurricular activities. If this program is cut, the county will lose funding, dedicated teachers, and revenue. The only thing these families will be doing in Spotsylvania is driving through. Thank you for your time.
There are no other citizens signed up to speak.
Is there anyone else that did not sign up to speak that would like to speak at this time? Come on up.
My name's Erin West, and I reside in Hanover County. I am an instructional tech coach for Spotsylvania County and one of 6 certified by Google trainers and innovators. So what I bring to Spotsylvania County is fantastic. I impact a lot of incredible students, and I bring my own 2 students, my boys, with me here. I second what the lady said, that should this pass, that tuition is required for out-of-county employees. I will be forced also to look for employment elsewhere, and another county will have the benefit of my experience and contacts with Google to change and impact education.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? We'll close public presentation time.
And brings us to the VDOT report, and I see Sean Nelson is here. Good afternoon, Sean.
Sean, we all have a printout copy at our seat. We could bring one down to you and, okay, gotcha. That's fine. If that works, whatever's easiest with you. Okay.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm here for your December report, last report of the year. I'll start with the Battlefield District with the construction updates. The Route 1 and Harrison Road project is officially complete now. I think the project is functioning very well. It's a great improvement for the area. As far as preliminary engineering, the I-95 at exit 126, the continuous through lane from 95 on to South Point Parkway, the current schedule right now, the PE has started, and we're planning to advertise that project for construction in 2021. So you'll see more ongoing things with that here upcoming. Next, I'll move on to the Berkeley District, Mr. Sabula. For construction updates, the 606 Mud Tavern Road projects to the east of I-95 is ongoing right now. They've started working on some of the ramps and driving the piles in the median. For Route 17 and Thornton Rolling, that project has now been added to the construction list where they're going to be adding the signal and additional turn lanes. The project was awarded to J.L. Kent and Sons for approximately $1.6 million. The project will start sometime in early 2018 and is expected to be completed in 2019. To give you an update on the Station 8 safety enhancements, we've installed the preemption equipment. We're just waiting to get the electrical service to it to finish that project out. For the preliminary engineering for the Berkeley District, the 606 Mud Tavern Road project with the improvements to the west. The public hearing was held on November 14th, 2017 at Thornburg Middle School. We've been taking public comments on that. The project is scheduled to be advertised in December of 2019. On the 658 Mount Olive Road project, which is between Spotsylvania County and Hanover over the North Anna River, that project was actually advertised today, so hopefully we'll see some movement on that in early 2018.
Sean?
Yes.
If I may, you finished with Berkeley, correct?
Yes.
I just, since this is my last meeting, I just wanted to make some comments to you and thank you for the last 4 years of cooperation. Every time I've called you, you've responded immediately, sometimes in the very same day for road improvements. And this certainly made my job a whole lot easier, and I really wanted to thank you for that. And let me back up to part of the report where we talk about the safety improvements to Station 8. If you would come up here, I have something I want to hand to you. This way, when you get frustrated and need stoplights, here is one for you, and you can squeeze it to your heart's content. God bless you, Sean.
The only way to get a stoplight in Spotsylvania right here. All right, we'll move on to Mr. McLaughlin's district, the Chancellor District. The update I've got for you is preliminary engineering for the 620 Harrison Road widening project. The county has submitted revenue sharing to fully fund the ultimate concept of that, so we're waiting to hear back on whether we'll get funding for that project. For the Cortland District, Mr. Ross, the I-95 safety improvements, they've had a major traffic switch there last week. We had some stumbles on that the first day. We've tweaked some things. I think we've got the backups off of 95 now, so it's looking like it's working well now. We're waiting for that project to continue to move forward.
And it's not too bad, so thank you.
Yes. All right. The next district is the Lee Hill District, Mr. Skinner. The comment I've got for you is the Commonwealth Drive commuter parking lot. That project has a public hearing scheduled for January 11th at Cedar Forest Elementary from 5 to 7 p.m. This is the project that was awarded through Smart Scale to provide a park and ride lot with 715 parking spaces on Commonwealth Drive. I have no updates for the Livingston District or the Salem District. I do have an update for VDOT studies. We're working on the STAR study for I-95 northbound at exit 126. We're hoping to have those results sometime in February 2018. As far as maintenance projects go, the Gardenia Drive project where we're replacing the pipe there, we've had some issues, so the contractor has been delayed a little bit. So we're hoping to have that finished prior to the end of the year, and a public release was sent out to all the public on December 1st. We've done some asphalt patching. The next big rush of patching we're going to be doing is on Spotsylvania Parkway, so look forward to that coming up here pretty soon. Those are my updates.
Any questions for Sean? Well, it's just our last meeting of the year, Sean. It has been a blessing. Thanks for everything you do. And I don't know if this is, I'm not trying to put down Mr. Sebula, but you respond to my text usually within 30 seconds. So thank you. Very responsive, and we couldn't ask for anybody better. So thanks for everything you do for the county.
Thank you all, and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Yeah, but Mr. Chairman, he actually accomplished the repairs.
I'm going to stay out of this one.
Uh-oh. Thank you, Sean. Mr. Chairman, board members, that brings us to presentations, reports, and first is a presentation from the Citizen Budget Review Committee. Should be on your desktop. And please hit that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start off here a little bit. I just started feeling a little bit under the weather. Normally, the next person in line would be Tim, but he's working security. So if I have to leave, Catherine will take over for me. Not exactly how I wanted to start the presentation, but that's how it's going to be. Can you hear me okay?
I got you loud and clear. Thank you.
All right. This is the Citizens Budget Review Committee brief for the second quarter of FY18. For those who might not know, the CBRC reports information on potential areas for savings and efficiencies from both the county and school budgets to the Board of Supervisors. For the actual policies and budgets, the Board of Supervisors is responsible for the county budget and policies, and the school board is responsible for the public school budget and policies. This presentation encompasses the last quarter of the CBRC, plus some indications of our future work. This is a brief overview of what the CBRC has been doing the last several months. We completed an overall review of the school budget. This was pursued for two primary purposes. First, to familiarize ourselves with the budget, which is large at around 500 pages. The second was to start to learn how to look at budgets, as some of us are new to this. The CBRC did receive a FOIA concerning discussions with the Board of Supervisors and CBRC meetings and minutes, and that was taken care of in accordance with the county and regulations. We took a short review of the county budget. This review was for mainly familiarization prior to the next budgetary cycle, plus to provide recommendations for the Board of Supervisors. CBRC will continue reviewing budget items for both county and school, with our next focus being on fire and EMS services. Lastly, the CBRC responded to requests from the supervisors to provide some early recommendations to the Board of Supervisors prior to the budgetary planning sessions starting early next calendar year, and that's at the end of my presentation. First, there are two informational update slides for items we have briefed the Board of Supervisors on previously. The first update comes in reference to the cost of hiring teachers. Previously, it was reported by the CBRC that the cost of hiring teachers earlier in FY17 had no monetary impact. However, we recently received this information from the school administration related to recruitment costs, which indicates that the previous statement was likely not entirely accurate, although the savings might not be calculable without significant effort. The contents of the cost estimate is provided to the Board of Supervisors as the CBRC received it. It's worth noting the actual report was not furnished to the CBRC and dates from the mid-2000s. The costs of the report quotes are out of date and predate many of the recruiting efficiencies common today. These numbers likely are not accurate representations of current recruitment costs for Spotsylvania. It is important to note the categories in this report, specifically which categories can be spread among multiple hires and which are based on individual. For example, job fair costs can be amortized among all the applicants or eventual hires from that job fair. The costs associated with training are going to be individual hire specific. No current Spotsylvania schools information was provided as requested for comparison to these estimates. This is the second update to previous CBRC reporting. This entails updated numbers for the out-of-county students currently attending Spotsylvania schools. The previous number was 198, which has risen to 225 students. These students are family members of 142 employees. We did receive the totals of students in special education programs, but have not received the total for students in other programs such as Governor's School, IB, or CATC. That question is still pending, and we're going back and forth with them currently. The cost of the county is a minimum of $1,188,900, with the additional costs related to the programs they participate in. The state provides nearly $1.3 million. The cost for educating these students is not reimbursed by the counties where they live. It is also worth noting the cost of educating these students might not be recouped by just canceling the policy. However, the exact impact and cost and savings is unknown at this time, as CBRC is waiting on further information from the school administration. Worthwhile points for comparison. The total number of affected employees amounts to 4.6% of all school employees, or 22.9% of all employees who live outside the county. The monetary county expense is just under 1% of the county contribution to the school's budget, or roughly about 2/3 of 1% COLA increase for the school system. Well, I'd like to start off by thanking Dr. Meyer and Ms. Shelley for their help working through the school budget. It's large with many complexities, and their help in understanding what things meant and in providing answers to our questions helped the CBRC work immensely. We reviewed the adopted school budgets for FY16, 17, and 18 to familiarize ourselves with budgetary trends. While this might sound silly, the trends help us understand how things are changing and helps prevent us from jumping on single-time expenses and focusing on the bigger picture. Going through the budgets and looking at the trends will help us as the proposed budget becomes available in late January timeframe, so we can more quickly focus on changes. I also want to thank the School Maintenance Department and school board members Kirk Twigg and Baron Braswell for providing me the opportunity to ask questions and tour the School Maintenance Department. It was highly informative. I provided the notes of the tour to the CBRC so everyone have an opportunity to have the same understanding I received. I also wanted to provide a reference point as the county and schools get together for these budget sessions. The operating budget for the school system, which doesn't include categories like CIP, for FY17 was $276 million with approximately 23,800 students. This results in an average operating expense per student of $11,348. For comparison purposes, Stafford reports approximately 27,800 students and reports an FY17 operations budget of $269 million and an average operating expense per student of $8,915. Numbers for both counties are reported via their respective websites. There are clear differences here, and the reasons for the $2,000 plus lower cost per student are immediately apparent. Comparisons like these are not necessarily indicative of inefficiencies, but are helpful in ensuring the county and schools are working as effectively as possible in the instruction of the children within the county. Both sides of the county budgets would find this singular data point worth investigating to understand if there are efficiencies to be found. We have asked and had answered many questions. There are still some outstanding, and we'll keep working with the school administration. We have covered our primary review, but will continue to review items related to the budget as questions and opportunity arises. We've also done a high-level review of the county FY18 budget. Previous to this budget cycle, the CBRC did a deep dive related to the Sheriff Department, and we will continue doing deep dives. Our next deep dive will be Fire, Rescue, and EMS Department. This will mimic what we did with the Sheriff Department by asking questions, providing an opportunity for the department to respond. We expect to mostly complete this by late January, in time for the budget crunch. After the budget review in February and March, we will invite the Health and Social Services to brief us on how they operate. I am pending setting up a tour of the county maintenance department as well. I'm hoping to work on it over the next couple weeks, though it might come in the new year as holidays are fast approaching, with only 13 days left before Christmas. As before, we will continue to review items related to the budget as questions and opportunity arises. These are the major open items we are waiting on. The IT purchases is pending for both county and school systems. The goal is to look for efficiencies in the purchasing process, and we've not received this information from either, and we're pending an update. Some of them are currently going through that particular process, and I have a feeling that's the reason for the delay. We're also waiting on implementation recommendations for the Evergreen report. We'll update the board when we receive plans for the school system, as well as reviewing the county approach. We'll do the two of them together to keep everything even. There are other minor questions still outstanding. We'll update the board with these at a future briefing. The CBRC was asked by the Board of Supervisors to come up with some recommendations before the start of the budget process. These recommendations are based on the CBRC work over the last several months. The first recommendation is based on a walk through the school maintenance facility. There's an electronic part delivery system based on barcodes, which looks to be effective but a little dated. However, there are also older parts that aren't inventoried. These are parts from old schools and other older systems. A paper inventory for school furniture, an inventory for the school printing shop, and at least one other paper inventory system. This collection of systems, or in some cases lack of, is full of inefficiencies and many are error-prone. The inventory system should be expanded to include all items in inventory. Barcodes work, but the county and schools should also look into RF tags as those are fast to scan and are cheap enough to be used in major warehousing and commercial applications. Reducing the number of inventory systems and simplifying how many inventory systems there are will improve the efficiency of the departments and provide real-time inventory information. It's likely that the county and school systems will find their budgets have increases. In order to ensure that the budgets are as lean as possible, both county and school should look to save a certain amount of money relative to the increases. We have listed here an example of saving $1 for every additional $2 spent. This is just an example of a goal which may not be realizable. However, it does encourage evaluating areas of the budget and budgeting assumptions that have gone without a review for a while. This should be encouraged, especially since the impacts of the downturn a decade ago are still affecting how the county and schools budget now. And in fact, the economic pain from the downturn has been institutionalized in the budgeting process, and the only way to avoid this is to challenge the assumptions and methods being used periodically to ensure they're still valid. This recommendation is a way of doing that. The first recommendation on this slide is a reflection on reviewing the school budget, but it could be extended to both the county budgets to ensure for clarity. The expenses categories don't list money that expires as carried over or monies returned in their expenses column. For example, if the school was to carry over $1 million, the expenses list would not have that information. A simple calculation between the total revenue and total expenses would show a $1 million difference, which might mislead where the money went, or at least cause questions. It would be very clear and helpful to have those items called out so at the end of the day, every dollar is accounted for in an easy ledger. We believe that would assist the budgeting process and improve transparency. This year it has approximately $12 million in excess funds in the county budget. In general, it is beneficial to reimburse the taxpayer those funds. That is sometimes a difficult task, and that should be checked against other methods for the wisest path. Another potential method to utilize those funds in effective ways to reduce future year costs. This could be avoiding the use of bonds by using cash on hand. This could be in reducing future maintenance costs by updating equipment now. This could also be in spending funds to improve efficiency, such as more efficient and complete inventory systems to reduce time spent by employees, improve accuracy, and generate reduced costs in doing what county and schools need to do. This is the last slide for my second quarter of the report. Thank you.
Well, I would just like to thank you, Jeremiah and Catherine. I know Dawn is in the back and Tim is in the back. I know you've spent lots of hours going over this, and I can't thank you enough for your service to the county and just the time that it's taken for you to do a review of our budget. And so I personally am thankful. I know the whole board is too. So with that, I think Dr. Trampy has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we know if other jurisdictions reciprocate as far as educating the children of our citizens who teach in other jurisdictions?
I'm going to let Catherine answer that. She's more in depth with the school.
I have some FOIAs from different school systems. It depends on which one. Stafford County allows tuition free only for licensed, certificated personnel. So teachers, administrators, guidance counselors. I'm not sure if the social workers have licenses. Prince William does not. They do not allow, they charge tuition, but they do give a 10% discount to people. Fairfax County does not. They not only charge the full tuition, and if there are any additional special education charges, they can be charging up to an additional $40,000. Arlington does not. Loudoun does not. Fauquier does. The city of Fredericksburg allows both school employees and the government employees, but that's a very small system. I think I'm not sure too much about the lower, the more southern counties, but it seems as the division gets bigger and the potential for the additional students grows, that they've cut it out. And I think, you did hear from 2 teachers today, but the current policy for Spotsylvania County Public Schools is that any employee may bring their children tuition free that lives out, any out-of-county employee.
Mr. Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on that is, why not Caroline? Why not King George? Why don't we know about that? Because to me, when I'm looking at Fairfax, mostly it's us moving up north because the pay is greater. Now we're looking at Carolina, who comes over here and lives in Carolina because of the living, where the money they can afford to live on. So I would ask that you do find that out, please.
Okay. I do know King George. I'm sorry I failed to mention it.
Thank you.
But they do allow the space available basis, but that's a county with only 1 high school, which would be the same as Caroline. If I were to say a trend, that based on the data that I received, the smaller school divisions do allow it because there are not that many employees. But I do not know about Caroline, but I do have the FOIA from King George. But I'll check on that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, a couple, I think it was mentioned about the principal can deny the move. I think somebody mentioned that. Do they have preference? So I guess I know we have some schools that are reaching capacity. Does an in-county student have preference if there's a out-of-county student in that school?
I don't know.
That may be a question for the schools.
Maybe for the school board.
So I guess that's a question because
I don't know, but we did ask the question specifically about Commonwealth Governor's School and IB, and so far they've chosen not to share that with us because we know that students, at least in the Commonwealth Governor's School, where every seat is taken, that maybe an out-of-county student has a seat where an in-county student did
So I
not.
guess maybe that's just something we can follow up with the schools, whether or not there's a preference, because I know they're going to have to start contemplating redistricting. Does that affect, that or out-of-county students in the county or vice versa? And the other one, I guess, really for the schools, is this a recruitment tool? Is this something we advertise out when we're doing our recruiting, saying, hey, we have out-of-state or, out-of-county free tuition as an incentive? I guess that's another one for the schools. Are we actively recruiting using this as an initiative or not? So maybe another follow-up question for the schools. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Yakubowski.
Thank you. Couple of things, and let me just jump on that real quick since it's been brought up. Do you have any recommendations? I mean, it seems an issue to bring up without recommendations. Why bring up the, it seems like there's a lot of questions still left about out-of-county students.
Well, I have one, but Jeremiah can.
Some of the informational updates are there because we've talked about it in the past, and this is things we have asked. According to our charter bylaws, which I think are combined now, we're supposed to bring information and recommendations if they're available. When it comes to the IB, that's a policy, or not the IB, but the out-of-county schools, that's a policy question for the school board. And it was requested from us to find out what kind of the cost was. And so that's pretty much no recommendation. It's just a matter of the information was requested, we're providing it as requested.
Okay. It would seem to me that the counties that you had listed that don't allow it are the counties that pay more for teachers. So it would, my assumption would be is that it is a recruitment tool that is used simply because Fairfax can pay more for teachers than Spotsylvania County can. Couple other questions that I have about that, or about your presentation in general. It seems like you've delved into the budget in depth, and I'm wondering, nothing was mentioned of our general fund versus all of our other funds. It doesn't seem like a prudent way to spend time if, for example, the SS department, Social Services Department, majority of that, overwhelming majority, I would say in the 90%, I don't have the exact number, of their budget is state mandated. So whether or not they're being efficient with their dollars, we do not have control over their dollars. We have control over our general fund, which is around $200 million. And I'd like to see how our general fund dollars are spent, not necessarily looking at the entire budget, simply because most of that is passed through and we can't do anything about it anyway. Has any of that been taken into consideration, or are we simply getting the big overview of the entire budget and then giving recommendations? Because I'd say the one recommendation that you guys made about using leftover funds to cover one-time purchases, we already do that. That's one of our guiding principles that we have done and we continue to do, simply because they're not recurring funds, so we can't use them for recurring items. So is there any focusing on the things that we can do, as opposed to just looking at the overall budget? Because some of it, you know, for example, the one that I've heard that is one of the most frustrating is the mulch in the playgrounds is a federal mandate with type and depth and all of that kind of stuff. We can't do anything about that except complain to the higher up. So can we focus on the things that we can deal with?
Yeah, we're going to be focusing on the general fund as the budgets come out. We're trying to straddle the difference between now and then, and after the next budget cycle is when we're going to look at doing some of the other things. We're trying to do deep dives as in each little area so we understand it, so we're not sitting there looking at it going, well, wait, what is this? We want to make sure we understand both the trends and some of the deep, so we have some of the context to have better and improving recommendations over time.
Okay, and then the other recommendation is about savings goals or metrics, you know, trying to save $1 to offset every $2 in new spending, which is a good goal to have, but that's why I'm wondering if you delved into the general fund to find efficiency. I mean, we can find savings, and I think that's some of the terminology needs to really be focused a little bit better. Savings, it's easy to find savings. We can cut if we want. Cutting is easy to do, but what is the trade-off of those cuts that we do? So I would like to look more at efficiencies. Are we doing the best with the dollars that we have in comparison to other localities and best practices, and if there's any methods that we need to instill in the county and the school side to make sure that we do that, so that we're not wasting money because of inefficiencies. So it's not necessarily a saving. Some of this that you had brought up about tracking the inventory, I was thinking of the computer systems that we've talked about on the county side, and they are dated, and it's going to cost money to update them. So you have to lay out that money to save the money. And so, you know, the easiest thing would be to say, well, keep doing what we're doing because we're not spending new money, but it's inefficient. So what we need to do is understand that there is and I hate using these kind of words, there is a investment that is necessary into some of these systems so that the efficiencies can be found. And I think that that's what we've even talked about when it comes to school and county consolidation, is that we work together to be efficient. And it's not that we're trying to save X number of dollars, it's we're trying to do the best that we can with the money that we have. So over time, the outlay is lessened as opposed to just keep doing what we're doing because we've always done it that way. So I would ask that, and one last thing, since you guys are here too, the board and the school board at the last joint meeting that we had talked about looking at school consolidation by June, I think it was. And there are 2 reports that are out there. One's a Stafford report, and I'll ask the county administrator to send it out to CBRC too if he hasn't yet. But there's a Stafford report that they did on what could be consolidated. So that kind of starts, so we don't have to reinvent what has already been done. It's a 2015 study too, so it's pretty up to date. And then the other one is a county study that was done by an outside group in 2005, and that's where the joint fleet maintenance combination came from. So if we can revisit those two and find the efficiencies, then maybe that's a better starting point than having to restart the whole process and not even know where to start. They already have categories of things that can be done together. So thank you very much.
Mr. Spula.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was a little bit confused on the statement, there's no reimbursement from other counties. I may have, my memory may not be serving me correctly, but about 2 joint sessions ago with the school board, I had specifically delved into that subject, asking about whether there was a reimbursement from the other counties or a quid pro quo, if you will. I do know that those who are military dependent students are reimbursed. Our county receives that money, but it was my understanding when I had asked the question that there was a reimbursement from the other counties. So if that's not the case, I mean, that's the way you stated it, but I certainly have been confused on that part because I thought that there has been a reimbursement.
I believe we've asked that question. We received the answer of no, but I'll re-engage to make sure that it's fully clarified in all semblances.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Mr. Batten?
Yeah, we did, Mr. Sabula, we did ask that. Ms. Gaines did tell us initially that, yes, they got reimbursement, but then it was brought to our attention that was incorrect at a later time and that we do not get reimbursed.
Thank you, Craig.
I know I think her name was Miss Lavelle. She spoke earlier about the federal and state funds. How does that fall into the 1 million, whatever it was that we spend of taxpayer money for the out of county students?
The quote I gave for the 1.188900 number is the county expense. The state is a hair under 1.3 million. I think it's like $100 less. And then the federal is like $640 times 225. So it's a couple $100,000 when you actually do the math, which is why I didn't mention it. It's because it's much smaller than the other numbers. Does that answer your question?
I think so. On the, did y'all look into the healthcare at all with the schools and how that differentiates?
We had asked questions on that, and we didn't get the response until like a week prior to our last meeting, which is when we did this presentation. We hadn't had time to actually discuss it. If you have particular questions, I know Catherine has been looking through it, and she's been kind of the insurance guru. I don't know if you want to field any of that question to Catherine.
Basically, what we looked at, both the county and the schools have open checkbook where you can look at their bill list. And in looking at the retiree insurance, seemed to be some fairly large amounts. The systems are different between the county and the schools. The schools for the pre-Medicare, so 55 to 64-year-old retirees, or 50 if they qualify to 64, they continue to pay the employer's share as if the employee were an active employee. That then not only for the employee, but for any spouses and family. That's quite an anomaly. The county, on the other hand, has a 20-year requirement. They will only pay benefits for the employee's retirement, and they have paid 50%. So we asked the question, how much would they save on the school side if they did not supplement the spouse's insurance and the family insurance? But they have not shared that information with us yet. But I believe it would be quite a savings.
All right, I appreciate it, because that's one of my things I've been trying to delve into is the health care. And, you know, we all want to be equal, but, and I know there's going to be some inequities between the two entities, and, you know, but.
Well, Mrs. Hayward, a couple of meetings ago, she suggested to the board that you look at once, for the county employees, once they become Medicare eligible, to do a Medicare supplement plan and a Part D, instead of still carrying that whole Anthem policy. And I know most of you aren't Medicare eligible. I am. And the Medicare supplement and the Part D actually ends up working better. And it would save you quite a bit of money. So hopefully she'll be coming back and bringing that back to you again.
Okay.
Now on the school side, they pay a certain amount towards Medicare Part A, Medicare Part B, and then they pay towards a Medicare supplement. So, you know, you all are way off as far as getting, and that is something that I would suggest that you all look at, really kind of standardizing that.
Okay.
And
would y'all be able to come and do a report for us specifically on the health care, whatever you found?
Well, we could. I know Mr. Ross had asked for a comparison. Is that correct? And from the county staff, I'm not sure he's received that yet, but there is money to be saved. I mean, basically, if you have a person retire and you're still paying full health benefits for them and their family, and then you have a new hire and you're paying health benefits for them and their family, I don't see it being sustainable.
I don't either.
So, and we want to do what we can, you know, for our active employees, not to shortchange the retirees, but paying for spouses and families, that is an anomaly.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Well, this on the other side, as far as the county side, we don't get the family portion at all. So.
Correct, or anything for your
spouse. And I know that firsthand.
Right, you would know that firsthand. Right. And that was confirmed to us from Mrs. Sorrell.
Well, if you're able to, I would like maybe you can work in conjunction with Ms. Hayward and bring it all together for us.
Well, when she comes back, that is definitely something you should consider. It will save the county a lot.
Okay.
I'll add it to the next agenda. We'll have a discussion about how to approach that and talk with Mary and everyone else to make sure we're good. I'll take that.
Mr.
I'll
Chair.
take that as an action.
So, Mr. Chair, I mean, let me just follow up on that, because this kind of ties into what Mr. Yakubowski just stated and what we talked about in the last meeting about there's obviously some differences between the school's health system and the county health system. And this is one of those things that maybe there's some efficiencies that can be gained by or garnered by combining the two systems or having at least the same benefit package for county employees, regardless of their school or county employees. And I think that would be a great one that you could probably, the data should be readily available, and that between yourself and Dr. Baker, you should be easily be able to come up with a comparison, X, Y, and, between the two programs and determine, can we go to some other type system or, again, I'm not an insurance person, but potentially go to what Catherine had stated, and what would the cost savings be without any loss of coverage to our employees, whether they're school or county? And maybe there's a better system, or maybe there's a better way to do that. But that seems like that's some low-hanging fruit that you could at least look at and potentially come back with some solutions to the county recommendations. Because, again, as we've always stated, any savings can be rolled back into, the educational part of that. And if we're inefficiently spending money on healthcare programs, maybe we can roll that money somewhere else. And again, I think, and that's a great item. I know there's some, back and forth about the CBRC and what is valuable data or not, but that's a great point. If you pull out one thing out of 10 and it results in, $1 million worth of saving, well, that's a lot of taxpayer funding that'd be better applied somewhere else. And the last thing is, I know the school are going to come back throughout the budget season between now and April with the Evergreen study and proposal. So I think we're also looking at the overall compensation package, and that's what the Evergreen looks at. And whether it's out-of-state or out-of-county tuition or health care, I think that all needs to be rolled up into the overall compensation and when they come back. So, maybe we can do better for the employees across the county, not just schools, not county, because I think in some of the last year budget meetings, the idea was not to make two separate classes of people, county and school. They're supposed to be, going closer to the same type of a pay structure to their county employees or taxpayers in Spotsylvania. So if we can go, Mr. Taylor, if you could come up with something like that, that would appreciate that. And I think maybe even by the next meeting, that's 6 weeks away, you should be plenty of time to gather.
May actually be the second meeting in January.
Yeah, correct. That's better.
This has also been a front burner issue with HR that we're also working on, and we'll bring those two together.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Stafford County schools and Stafford County government did combine their insurance programs. So it's the same, the premiums are the same for both sides of the road.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. It's so much appreciated. And again, all of the CBRC members, I hope I didn't forget anybody. I see 2 more in the audience, and I know there's several more. If I forgot anybody, my apologies, but thank you for all that you do. Greg and David, are they here? They're here. Thank you, Greg and David, too.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you as well.
Mr. Chairman, next up we have a brief on updates to the county's investment policies, and our treasurer, Mr. Pritchett, is here with a guest.
Evening, I'd like to sorry about that. To help with the investing of the county funds, the priorities hasn't changed. Safety is first, liquidity second, and return is third. County funds are invested overnight as well as out to 2 to 3 years to get the max return. I believe everyone has a PowerPoint presentation in front of you, also a copy of the revised investment policy. I'll let Kathleen Bowie with PFM present the PowerPoint presentation. There are a few changes that need to be made in the investment policy. PFM has been working with the Treasurer's Office for over 15 years. And PFM also handles the SNAP program for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and this is for handling the bonds, and the county has been a participant of this since 1989. We meet every quarter to discuss investment strategies, to look at the available funds and project the cash flow. So I'll let Kathleen go through the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you, members of the board, for allowing me to speak here today. The investment policy is a critical document that outlines how the county's operating funds and bond proceeds can be invested and establishes guidelines to make sure that management remains prudent and in line with the county's objectives and risk tolerances. As Larry noted, the policy begins with describing the county's investment objectives. The primary objective when investing taxpayer funds is safety, preservation of principle of the county's investments. The second objective is liquidity, to make sure that you have cash available for any anticipated expenditures, as well as any unanticipated expenditures that, as you know, can certainly crop up from time to time. Consistent with the ability to achieve those two primary objectives, the third objective of the county's investment activities is return, to be able to generate a competitive rate of return while still ensuring preservation of principal and ample liquidity. The investment policy has been structured to provide the county with the flexibility to meet these objectives as market conditions change, as the county's cash flows may change. The policy is structured so that these objectives can be achieved. The investment policy describes the responsibilities of the treasurer. The treasurer, as you know, is responsible for managing the county's investments. The policy enables the treasurer to delegate day-to-day investment responsibility to staff or to an external investment manager, which is the role that PFM serves for the county. The policy sets up a framework of internal controls and memorializes important best practices to protect the county's investment activities. The bulk of the investment policy describes the individual types of investments that the county can invest its funds in. The Code of Virginia Investment of Public Funds Act lists the different types of securities that you are able to use in your investment portfolio. The investment policy lists these securities, but also establishes parameters around the permitted investments. We typically refer to these as the belts and suspenders. This is how we really manage different types of investment risk. You can see one example at the bottom of the page here. The county is permitted under Code of Virginia to invest in federal agency obligations. For this security type, we've established a sector limit. That's the total amount of the county's funds that can be invested in federal agencies as a whole. We've also established an issuer limit, the total amount of the county's funds that can be invested in securities issued by any individual issuer. The policy establishes a minimum ratings requirement to ensure that only very high credit-worthy securities are held in the portfolio. And the policy also establishes a maximum maturity. You can see federal agencies as an example here. For other security types that may carry a higher level of credit risk, like a high-quality corporate note, the sector and issuer limits are even tighter to ensure that the county's investment portfolio is very well diversified. The investment policy describes the types of reports that the treasurer is responsible for reviewing. These types of reports describe the investments held in the county's portfolio. They also describe the performance of the county's portfolio and how your funds are performing in comparison to the overall market. as represented by the performance benchmark that is used to compare the county's funds. The Treasurer's Office has also recently established a report to include on the county's website on the transparency page. This is a report that's designed to provide high-level, detailed information to county citizens or other interested parties, and describe some key information about what types of securities are held in the county's portfolio, the credit quality of the county's securities, and shows that the portfolios are very well diversified, that they're invested in very high quality investment instruments, and answers some of the questions that citizens may have about how the county's cash and investments are managed. As Larry noted, we're here today because we've recently adopted some changes to the investment policy. These changes don't impact the true purpose of the policy. They don't impact the county's investment objectives. The investment policy revisions that we've made do better align the county's permitted investments with investments that are permitted under Virginia code. Some of these revisions also more clearly define investment parameters and more clearly describe best practices that are in place now and being used to manage investment risk, but are now more clearly described in the investment policy. And finally, the policy has been revised to more clearly describe reporting and require a higher level of transparency in reporting by including reports on the county's website. Those are all of the comments that we've prepared. What questions do you have about the policy that I can answer?
Hey, Dr. Trampy.
The second to last slide, you said revisions are designed to align the county's permitted investments with investments permitted under the Code of Virginia. Just in general, did that add permitted investments or reduce them? And if it reduced them, which ones can we no longer partake?
The minor changes were made to add certain types of municipal securities and federal agency securities. The modifications were also made to better align the wording and add code references so that a reader can more easily cross-reference between what the county can invest in and where that's described in code.
Mr. Skinner.
Thank you. Larry, along this brief, you said periodically you could change, you had the ability to change things to make it more profitable. I'm not sure which slide it was. It may have been one of the early slides. What exactly does, let's keep going, please. Oh, periodically review the policy and make changes as necessary in order for the county to continue to meet the investment objectives. So I'm just for me, I'd like to know, what do you look at and what changes have you made in the past, if there is?
Well, what we've tried to do recently is do a better job of looking at the cash flow. We meet each quarter to see how much cash we've got available, how much we've invested in the past. We're talking right now as far as we got the flux of revenue coming in, for the tax due date. So we're looking at we can possibly increase the longer term that we have because we did have a little bit more funds than needed. They were still invested, but they were invested at a shorter term. So like going out 3 or 4 months, we're looking at this particular period, instead of going 10 million, we go try 12 million. So we can stretch it out and get a better return. We're talking about internal policies as far as periodically reviewing too.
Thank you.
Mr. Jakubowski.
So you don't mean you've invested in Bitcoin? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's very true.
Okay. Yeah, if you would have,
really
wow.
well.
Yeah, that's where the extra 12 million came from this year. Yeah. Thank you.
Let me hand out to you too. It's a more up-to-date. I noticed this one had August. This would be returns for October.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board while Larry's doing that?
Okay. Is that any other questions?
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, next up, Mr. Cole has brought forward your legislative agenda for the county for the upcoming General Assembly session.
Thank you. You know, I emailed this out before, and hope you all had an opportunity to take a look at it. You know, it's basically mostly last year's agenda that you all adopted with some additions. And in your packet, there's what was adopted last year and then what's proposed for this upcoming General Assembly session. Some of the new additions, they would start with item 10 on the new list, boundary establishment to add Spotsylvania and Orange County to the list of localities that can settle establish their boundary using GIS data instead of having to hire, do an expensive survey and things. Another would be to add general government facilities located within a district to the list of facilities that could be funded in a special service district. That could, I think, perhaps, if that was adopted, mitigate some of the changes to the proffer law. Mutual support, this is something that came out from our building department. Sometimes localities, especially smaller localities, may have a shortage of building inspectors and request help temporary help from larger localities. And this would just authorize localities to enter into agreements like that for mutual support. Doesn't mandate anything. And then another addition that was requested was to allow localities to assess impact fees for infrastructure costs beyond just transportation. So, you have the list before you. You can certainly add to it or delete items from it, or not even adopt a legislative agenda. It's not required, but it's something traditionally most localities do. So it's there before you for your action.
Any discussion? Mr. Sabula.
Just a quick question, Mr. Cole. I remember in the past when we discussed the legislative agenda, we were concerned about a lot of items being on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is this still a valid concern? Should we be looking at maybe removing or?
It's your all's call. You can have as many items or as few items as you wish. If you only want to focus on a handful of really high important items, that's certainly your call. Or you could put together a list of longer. Like I said, I just started with last year's agenda and then added items to it based on input from both staff and supervisors.
Well, I know that I've reviewed it, and I think it's a good list. And if nobody else has any concerns,
you can make a motion. But I think there's some more comments coming.
Oh, okay, well, I'll wait then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Skinner.
Thank you. Excuse me. Mark, this isn't necessarily maybe for this county, but the VRE is trying to get a floor tax. And from my understanding from VRE that it might be a good year to do that. Is there a way that we could support, if this board would be a floor tax for the VRE? Because, you know, the problem is with gasoline going down, the state has already set a floor tax for them, for their tax on gasoline. And in doing that, they did not do it for VRE and stuff of that nature. So we have been fighting that, even though the state, keeps a floor tax, which means if that fuel goes below per gallon, cost per gallon, you still get the tax based on a certain rate. I'm not sure, Mark, is that 230, is that 3? You know exactly what that rate is?
I don't recall off the top of my head what the current floor is in a state gas tax. And just to explain it, back in 2013, when the General Assembly passed their transportation funding omnibus, what they did was they went away from a cents per gallon on the gas tax and made it a percentage tax. However, to try to make sure that you know, VDOT didn't lose funds if gasoline, you know, got really cheap like it sometimes does. They put a floor on that, so that the percentage would be based on, you know, at a certain level, no matter what the actual price of gas was. And the VRE gas tax, the 2% gas tax, was in a different section of the code, I believe, and no floor was ever adopted for that, and it's a 2% gas tax too. So as prices go down, you know, your percentage of gas tax, not the percentage, but the amount of gas tax collected goes down. Really, you know, this is just philosophizing. You know, they probably never should have went away from a cents per gallon, and that way you don't have that problem. But certainly, if you wanted to, you could add, you know, establishing a floor, you know, in the VRE gas tax. You know, if the board decides to do that, you can add that to the agenda. I know it's been a topic of discussion in the General Assembly, and there's been a couple of bills introduced over the last few years to do that. They haven't passed yet, but you know, I mean, the board is certainly within its prerogative to add that to their legislative agenda.
Well, the reason I ask that is because the VRE money for transportation has been very important to this county. Okay, and in many times it's kept us above water over the many years that we've had it. And I would think it would be very important for this board to add that to the agenda. And I would, Greg, did you make a motion yet? Okay, thank you.
No,
so whoever made the motion, I would personally would like to see that be part of our agenda, legislative agenda, because it's very important. I mean, it could be the point where we are losing critical money to keep us afloat. And again, that has helped us keep the tax the way it is and not raise it, because that money itself has come, you know, I think over the last 6 years, we're around $36 million that we've collected from it. And so that's quite extensive when you break it down to $1.2 million per penny, what it's helped us. And so I would like, my personal would be, if I have to, I would make a motion to add it to the agenda, and then someone else could make the motion to.
Mr. Skinner, if I may just make a recommendation. I know we've all had a chance to look at what's in there already. Perhaps we could motion to approve it as is and then take this up as a separate issue, because I personally don't understand what you're saying quite to the level that I need to quite yet. That way we won't get held up on this thing.
As long as we have I agree with what you're saying. If we need to explain that more, we'll be happy to do that. But along the way, after this meeting, will we be able to add to our legislative agenda in the future? And if we are, then
well, I'm okay with a vote on it. I'm just recommending that we vote on what we've already seen, and then,
Okay.
if that's
No,
okay with you. Okay.
I'm fine, no problem with
Mr.
that.
Yakubowski.
Thanks. Two other things that I would add to this, and they're more theory and philosophy, is resisting unfunded mandates when they come down. I mean, that's something that we need to make a statement about. And then the other thing, too, is relaxing of the Dillon rule as much as possible. We've seen it just in what Mr. Skinner was bringing up, that we had a funding stream that the General Assembly went ahead and changed, and it doesn't fall back on them, it falls back on us. And so we are at the whim of what the General Assembly does when it comes to the areas of basically anything, especially transportation, taking away the revenue share instead of every year, every 2 years. You know, things like that that we're relying upon, and then they just do it. It makes it difficult for us to do our job. So if we can, and perhaps those are more statements than agenda items, but I think that those things need to be placed out there because we need to have more local control if we can. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sabula?
Well, I'm still willing to make a motion to approve the legislative agenda as distributed, and I think we can take up the other issues, or at least I won't be, but the other issues can be brought up to add to it at a later date.
Okay. Any other discussion? We'll call the question.
Seven yes.
And Mr. Skinner, would you like to motion for the VRE gas flat tax, or would you like to just bring that up at our next meeting?
I want to make sure that people understand it properly, and if I think it would be better to just go ahead and, if we have time, to explain exactly what happens, and then we'd be happy to give it the next meeting, and then make the motion.
Okay.
I want everybody to understand.
Gotcha. And Mr. Yakubowski, would you like to add your your two things, or one of them? The unfunded mandate sounds, I think you're going to have no resistance on that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's
more of a statement, but if you
Yeah,
want to
it's more of a
make it into a legislative agenda, is there a way to?
Well, we can add it to what Mr. Skinner's doing, and then
Okay.
and we can figure a better way of stating it and how we phrase it. That's fine.
Sounds good. Okay.
Just got a question, Mr. Chairman, in that connection. Mr. Skinner, does VRE have recommended language or language that they're pursuing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I will
That
get
we
that
can-
for you from the
so if we can
VRE.
mine that from the website, then that might make this relatively simple.
I'll get that to you next week.
Happy to
This
do
week.
that. Okay, thank you. Next up is the vote on SUP 16-0013. This is the Milestone T-Mobile Telecommunications Tower in the Chancellor District. Mr. White.
Again, for the record, Patrick White, I appreciate your patience for that. As you recall, during the, let me just get my presentation going here first. So, previously, on November 9th, the Board of Supervisors continued the vote for special use case SUP 1613, following a recommendation of approval by the Planning Commission and the Cable TV Commission. During the November 9th meeting of the Board of Supervisors, the shot clock was extended by mutual consent to tonight. A number of questions were left unanswered during that meeting, and within your board packet tonight is a memo that the applicant has submitted to address some of those questions from that night. And I'll summarize the highlights of that memo. That there was not an ability to upgrade to a Fort Worth or reinforced style transmission tower in order to accommodate antennas to the, that it was not acceptable by Dominion. Nor was the Dominion receptive to the co-location of commercial cellular equipment on an existing communication or microwave tower within the substation. It was determined that lowering a tower to 140 feet would be acceptable to the applicant. This dialogue led to an on-site meeting between staff and the applicant, Supervisor McLaughlin, and some members of some interested parties that lived in the Nye River Landing community to the north. Again, the details of those notes are within your agenda packet, but I'll summarize as the applicant is proposing to reduce the height of the proposed communication tower by 10 feet, from 150 feet with a 6-foot lightning rod down to 140 feet with a 6-foot lightning rod. At that height and the proposed location, which we'll get to in just a moment, that places the approximate height of this tower below, about 15 feet below the microwave tower on the property now, and about 15 feet higher than the H-frame transmission or lines that are just to the south, not the real big ones. Also, during that site visit, we looked for an opportunity to relocate the tower perhaps to the east of the substation, and that did not work, and perhaps to the north of the substation, where there was existing stormwater facilities and easements that the Dominion basically preventing us from doing a relocation to that side. There was generally no opportunity to accommodate a monopine or a stealth tree pole antenna. The best that the applicants were able to propose in your packet tonight was relocating the proposed tower to the southwest corner of the property, kind of tucking it into that corner. This is an image of the original, or the submittal you previously saw with the cell phone tower just south of the existing substation. The proposed new location is in this southwest corner, and again, it's been reduced by 10 feet. You also note a difference between these two these two pictures on your GDP. The former one did depict 5 different sites or located antenna locations. The new one is down to 3. The page that I circulated before just minutes ago contains a new note at the bottom of the page, and I'd like to call your attention to that note. That note was added to the GDP in an effort to allow 2 things. Principally, what that note says is that if the applicant is able to demonstrate that a monopine tower is safe at the location that's depicted on the GDP, then they could do so, and they could put as many antennas on it as they'd like. If they can't prove that it's safe and they continue to only be able to do a monopole, a traditional monopole design, then they'll build it out in accordance with the GDP. And I show you again that GDP, which was submitted to us, which depicts the 3 sites. So staff believes that that note is going to provide the applicant, for lack of a better term, an incentive to further pursue a monopine design. But in the event they can't, it would allow them to build out their site as they've depicted in the GDP. So also before you is a resolution. The resolution was tweaked with a new revision date. It included some the standard conditions regarding interference resolution and compliance with other county codes. And it also required that trees that were going to be replaced, as shown on page Z8, be replaced with evergreens that would be 4 feet tall at the time of planting. That is one of the notable things staff picked up on in this new location because of the location of the proposed tower. Now, some additional trees would have to be cleared, and that's all. Staff will stand by for your questions, and the applicant is present as well.
Are there any questions?
Not this time.
Okay.
I'd like to see if the applicant has, address it any more specifics.
Without any objections? Okay. Charlie?
Mr. Chairman and other members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Charlie Payne with the law firm Hersher Fleischer, and we represent the applicant. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all. And staff has gone through some most recent history. We were here back in November, early November, and Supervisor McLaughlin had a series of questions regarding any adjustments we can make to the proposed tower. And just, real quick, history of this site. This is the Chancellor Dominion Virginia Power substation. The utility facilities in that area include a 100-foot wide easement that have been in place since 1966. The substation has been in place for over 20-plus years. So my client, obviously believing that this was the appropriate footprint to put this monopole tower, had decided on this site. So that's the quick history that you're aware of. Mr. McLaughlin had also asked us to meet on site with some of the neighbors and staff members and himself, which we did on November 30th. And he could probably reiterate or state that it's a pretty massive site. It's got lots of tall towers, including guide-wide towers that are over 108 feet tall, in addition to the transmission towers, which are taller than that, and a monopole tower, which is currently used by Dominion, which is 150 feet tall. And we were asked to relocate the proposed site, which is literally just south and in the middle of the substation area, off the site, of course, further southwest, if we could, or northwest. So we took everyone around to the northwest side. Obviously, as we had stated, there's conservation easements, stormwater management facilities. But the other thing that's over there is infrastructure for future expansion by Dominion for the substation. So there's nowhere for us to be over there for that purpose. As staff has noted, we look to the facilities, the transmission facilities, just to our north, which would be the appropriate place to capture what we require for coverage and propagation, pursuant to our propagation analysis, and that facility was not stable enough to hold our facility. So really the only option we had was to relocate the tower, and if you've not been to the site, it kind of sits closer to the right-of-way area, so it does, you can see it where we had initially proposed it. Moving it further southwest actually puts it in the tree line and denser into the tree line area. And Mr. McLaughlin had also asked us to see if we can drop it lower from a ground elevation perspective. So we did that, and we maintained the tower at 140 feet versus 150. I say maintain, we reduced it to 140. Obviously, that is to ensure that the coverage objectives that we have could still be obtained. In addition to that, some of the neighbors, one of the neighbors, Mr. Brace, I believe it is, was concerned about the number of antennas on the tower. So we likewise reduced that from 5 to 3. Our objectives in that regard were to reduce the pole, put it in a lower elevation, and to also eliminate some of the antennas for visibility and aesthetics issues. So we did all of those things in our most recent proposal. And if you look at the elevations, and I do recall Mr. Brace also saying he could really only see, and correct me if I'm wrong, about halfway or 3/4 up of the current Dominion tower. So taking all that into account, and I did go into the neighborhood to take a look at the views, and you can, in the right-of-way area, you can see the tower. Moving it left, getting it into the tree line, away from the right-of-way area view, and reducing it. In essence, if you think about where the current tower is for Dominion, it's at a total area of about 449 feet if you take the ground elevation with the tower. We are at, I'm sorry, that's where we are. We are at 449 feet, 140 feet tall with 309.5 feet of ground elevation. The Dominion Tower is 150 feet tall with 318 feet of ground elevation, which puts it about 20 feet higher than us. Patrick's math was off just a little bit. And if you compare us to the guide poles that are near us, because one of the other requests we had was to get ourselves closer to lining up with the transmission lines so we look like we're part of the substation, which we were able to accomplish with this movement. We're only about 15 feet higher than those guide poles. So that was what we set out to do to try to address all the issues that came up. And then we were asked to take a look once again today at the pine pole option, which has been rejected, not by us. We had submitted a pine pole option at the prior site, 150 feet with 5 antennae, but that was, I don't know if the word is rejected, but there was concerns by the county consultant that that would give rise to potential worker safety via static electricity issues. These pine needles or pine, whatever they are, branches, are obviously made of material that would attract electricity. If they can't be grounded, someone could be electrocuted. You can imagine that at that point in time, Dominion was not real excited about a pine pole on site for many reasons, not to mention public safety. So today we had a conversation with them, and the conclusion was that they did not want a pine pole there. However, because there has not been a completion of what is called an induction study, I believe that's correct, to determine whether we could ground any sort of static electricity, we have agreed and located on our GDP that if we can determine, and Dominion of course approves this, that we can safely locate the pine pole in the new location that we have proposed, we would do that at 150 feet plus 5 antennae. So is that, I don't know if that covers all the questions or concerns or issues that were raised.
Yes. So a couple things. So again, I walked the site with several members of the Homeowners Association, and Mr. Brace was the spokesman of that particular group. And the one thing that he did point out, and I'm just verifying what you did say was accurate, that he could only there's multiple poles on that substation lot. So those that haven't seen it, it's a fairly large, I don't know how many acres it is, it's a fairly large site. 108-foot tall monopoles, if you want to call it, that high tension lines are run from and to. And Mr. Brace indicated that the only tower that he can see, only pole, is the actual tower with the microwave.
On the northwest.
The microwave tower, if you want to call it that. So that led us to, or me seeing, is there a compromise available here? And that's why I started looking at, could we tuck this further in at a lower elevation? And that's what was proposed here. Up until today, it was really looking at if you can, regardless of the height of the pole, if you can't see it, then it's fine. It doesn't really even need to be camouflaged. Based on the proposal here, we're looking at about, I had calculated about 12 feet, but if it's 15 feet higher than the existing poles, and if you can't, there's a good chance you won't be able to see this pole in an uncamouflaged manner when it's tucked into this tree line as proposed. And that's what we were kind of moving forward based on what I had seen. Today it came up that there is the outside possibility that a pine pole is still a viable option. And the incentive, if it was to the telecommunications company, is that you can essentially get 67% greater carriers from 3 to 5 if you go to a pine coverage. So it potentially is worth the investment to do the induction study, which I can't imagine is that expensive based on, I'm an engineer. Give me the calculator and I'll take care of it. But I think that's something that.
Sign a waiver, we'll put you on site.
Yeah, I'll take care of it. Yeah. So, I think that's an opportunity. And I think that if you think outside the box, too, even if this goes forward, there's only potentially 15 feet that's visible, and maybe that's the only piece that needs camouflaged as well. And maybe, it won't look, I don't think you need the Route 3 lone pine, because, that's definitely, it sticks out there. But maybe you only need to camouflage the top 15 feet, and maybe that meets it with inside the safety considerations.
Yeah, that's something we'll take a look at. There are manufacturing issues with that, but no need to go into all those details.
That's right. So I mean, I understand what you presented so far, and we did close the public hearing, but, so what I'd like to do, because you did present something different to the public that wasn't presented earlier, and without objection, I'd like to open it up to the folks to make comments on this.
Any objections from the board? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So at this time, if there's somebody that wants to talk about the cell tower that we've been discussing, come on up. I think you've got 3 minutes. Unless you're representing the HOA.
Yes, Jason Heine, 7209 Nye River Landing, and I am on the Nye River Landing Homeowners Association Board. So we are, of course, very concerned about the views from our neighborhood and coming into our neighborhood. There's a lot of stuff going in behind us, the power station, the assisted living facility, and now this pole. And I think at this point we have to assume that it's going to be the monopole, that they can't do the pine pole according to this plan, if we're going to make a vote on it anytime soon. One thing I think we should do is do a balloon test like we did when they were first proposing the site, so we can see what it looks like. And when they do the drawing this time, they should do it fully loaded, so I guess it would be 3 tiers. Also, I'd like to ask the county, it's my understanding that the county came up with the 200-foot setback for the pine pole. Is there some higher level guideline where that comes from, or is that just pulled out of thin air, or what's the justification for that? Because maybe we can do the pine pole. And then lastly, I did speak to Pastor Buddy at the church, and he said at the very beginning they were trying to get the cell tower on their property so they could get rent from it, and that the church board would be amenable to considering that. So I think that if we can't get the pine pole that way, or if we can't verify from the the balloon test and the images, then that would be another option. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak about the cell tower?
Mr. Payne, I have a quick question for you. So let me, I guess the question would be with this balloon, would you fly a balloon at this lower altitude before you even contemplate an induction study?
Typically, they would not, no. All that testing's been done already just to propose for the location.
Well, I guess what I'm looking, so you have an option to do a pine pole if the induction study, if it seems feasible, but if the residents can't see it, you wouldn't need to do it anyway. I guess that's my question. If you flew a balloon and there's no impact to the community, I don't think there'd be any issues in the community at that point, and you wouldn't even need to consider going forward unless you wanted to add those 5 providers.
Mr. Chairman, as you may know, Mr. McLaughlin, you may know, today is the deadline for a decision on this case. So what would be the timing for the balloon flying? Is that, or is there a request for us to extend this, which we've got contractual obligations, we're a little concerned.
No, I don't think it was so much a request to extend, but would you, if it's approved, would you fly the balloon before and then determine whether or not you were going to pursue the pine discussion? I mean, if you fly a balloon test at the 140 feet at this lower elevation and the neighbors can't see it, then I don't think they're going to have any issues with a pine pole.
Well, my interpretation of how we structured this current proposal was that the pine pole would be a priority for the community. So we would do the induction analysis, and that analysis said, yeah, we could do so without any public safety issues, and Dominion was okay with it. A pine pole would go forward ahead of.
All right, so we're going to do the induction. We're going to do the study.
Yes.
And if it's feasible, we're going to build the pole. If
Right.
it's not, you're going to go forward with the pine pole.
We're going to go forward with the monopole with the reduction of antennas and reduction of height.
If the pine pole is not feasible.
That's right. Yeah. What we've got is that happens first. We do that analysis first, and then we.
Right. And who's going to do the analysis?
Certainly, the county can be involved with its consultants to verify what we're going to do, but we'll do it with Dominion and submit that analysis to the county. Would that be appropriate?
And when are we going to do this? What's our time frame to
Prior
make a decision?
prior to final site plan and construction plans. So the county would control that trigger. If we didn't do that, they wouldn't be approving our site plan or construction.
Okay, so the priority goes to a pine pole.
Right.
Assuming that we can reach an agreement on safety.
Right.
And if not, then we'll go with the monopole.
Right, that's how we structured it. That'd be the first step to analyze, and then if that doesn't work, it goes back to the monopole. If not, we move forward with the pine pole.
Okay, understand.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve special use permit 16-0013, with the focus being on what was just discussed. It's pine pole and then monopole if that does not pan out.
Mr. Chair, that would be with the recommended conditions as the conditions were changed tonight with respect to the GDP, which was presented here, and also with respect to the new resolution, which referenced the latest version of the GDP.
Perfect. Thank you, Carl. That's it.
And the revised page.
Any other discussion?
Revised GDP page.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I want to say, you know, I spent a lot of time on this with some of the neighbors and the consultants and the county and walked the site, and we've done a number of these polls. So I mean, it's not an easy decision to go forward and do this thing, but I think that this is a pretty good compromise. I don't think we would fare well if we had to deny this. I don't think we would win in a court case if it came to that. I think this is not a bad project all in all. Of the cell towers I've seen, this is probably one of the less intrusive in the neighborhoods. And I think, and again, I will be involved in this study, in the induction study, because it, you know, our consultant should have done this long ago. But with that, that's all I have.
Any other discussion? Call the question.
Seven yes.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Chairman, board members, we do have one short closed session item for your consideration. We also have, Carl has indicated that the discussion of board bylaws for 2018 and the board committee bylaws, which is the next item on the agenda, would be very short, and I'm wondering if we might tuck that in ahead of a short recess and fit in the closed session.
Yeah, we're coming up to the public hearing time. How long is the Rappahannock Goodwill Industries brief?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Let's go with that. How about we go with that, and then why don't we stick on the schedule? We might be able to get both things done.
All right. Carl's
going to be short. I'm trusting a lawyer to be short. I don't know about that. Maybe we should go with the Goodwill first.
Susan?
It's not Mark.
I think you're up, yeah. I'll remind the board that this will be as short as you all make it.
It's our fault, right?
I can only do so much.
May I have the floor computer? Do I have the floor computer? And Susan Cook. Sure, sorry. Susan Cook, Deputy County Attorney, and I will be as brief as possible. As you know, this matter is before you tonight. Let me see how sorry. On the second of 3 meetings that we're having to discuss this issue. At the last meeting, we raised the issues with you and outlined our suggested changes. Tonight is the green. We are here to receive direction from you on those suggested changes so that at the next meeting, when the board goes to adopt its bylaws for 2018, we can have it teed up for you the way you would like to see it done. So our game plan quickly for how to handle these changes is as follows. All of the amendments and changes that we are proposing will be carried forward for adoption in January unless we hear otherwise from you. That's our default position, And of course, that doesn't mean you have to accept them in January. The point is, if we don't discuss it, they'll be carried forward from November to today to January. Tonight, what we're going to do is review the proposed substantive changes to the board bylaws for board direction. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. So tonight, the plan is to review the substantive changes to the board bylaws that we're proposing, and these were all included in the redlined version for the November 28th meeting, and I believe they're also, well, no. So if you reviewed them for the November 28th, they'll be familiar, but if you haven't, had an opportunity to let us know if we're on the right track with those changes. So finally, this game plan also includes not covering some things, and I want to make sure that you know that in case somebody wants to cover those. First, we don't intend to walk through any of the grammatical or typographical changes that we're correcting in the board bylaws. They're redlined in the board bylaws, but we're not going to go through them now. Second, we don't intend to walk through any of the reformatting or non-substantive changes that we're proposing to the board committee bylaws. And again, we aren't proposing substantive changes to the board committee bylaws, so we're not going to address them at all tonight, unless you would like to do that. And finally, we don't intend to walk through the draft committee bylaws that we made for those board committees that didn't already have bylaws. And all of these suggested changes that we're not reviewing were in the drafts for the November 28th meeting, and I believe you also have them attached to the agenda for tonight. And also you should know that the chairs for each of the committees, for the board committees, have reviewed the bylaws that were proposed. So with that, we'll walk quickly through what the changes, the substantive changes to the board bylaws. The first change comes into section 3.3-1, and we talked about this before, and this really is the biggest change. The language that's here in green is different, but it's not really a substantive change. It's the red language that is the most substantive, and what that does, of course, as we talked about before, is this section says that the chair shall make all appointments to the board committees, and the red language says unless as set forth otherwise in approved bylaws of a board committee or as controlled by ordinance. And what we believe that would do is marry the bylaws with the practice, the current practice of the board. And then the green language that follows, I think, is clarification rather than a really substantive change. It just says that the appointees shall serve for a one-year term that ends upon the expiration of the chair's term at the commencement of the organizational meeting the following year. And a member's status as an appointee to a board committee terminates contemporaneously with his or her termination of status as a board member, whether by resignation, election, end of elected term, or otherwise. And the ellipsis only indicates that the paragraph continues, but there are no further changes in that paragraph. So the change to section 4.1, on the next slide, section 4.1E6, this is a change that we actually picked up a few months ago. We thought it made sense this is a change to speakers at public presentations. As you know, currently a speaker at a public hearing has a time limit. That time limit does not appear for a speaker at a public presentation. We thought it made sense that when citizens are addressing the board at a meeting, that the rules would be the same, regardless of when it is at the meeting. You may disagree, but we put that in there for your consideration. The next change to section 5.3b is really just a clarification that sorry, I skipped my notes, that the applicant speaks after staff, first after staff. And on section 7.3, here. This is technically a change, but it's a relatively minor one. Sometimes a regular scheduled meeting isn't on a Tuesday. Just wanted clarification that the board notebook is still due 7 days beforehand. Section 8.1, the first change just clarifies the distinction between appointments to board committees and appointments to bodies not created by this board. The second change, which is in green, is just capitalization and wouldn't be here, except that it's in between the other two changes in the same paragraph. And the third change technically is a substantive addition, but the bylaws are silent on this point, and we believe that it reflects current practices, and that is that you don't attach the curriculum vitae. We are taking the R. It should be curricula for plural rather than curricular vitae of a prospective appointee if that appointee is being reappointed. Finally, the last change looks long, and I won't read through it, but it just appends the board committee bylaws to the board's bylaws so that it resolves some of the issues that we talked about in the last meeting. And the only thing I would draw your attention to is the last sentence says the board shall make any changes to the bylaws of a standing committee by simple majority vote. If that sentence isn't there, then it would require an amendment. Any of the board committee bylaws would require the 2/3 vote that it requires to amend your bylaws, which you may want, but currently it doesn't require that. If they aren't appended to the bylaws and you want to change board committee bylaws, it only requires a simple majority vote. So that's the only thing that could kind of slip through your attention. And finally, once again, where we are now is whatever we don't hear from you is just going to go forward through to January, but any direction you would like to give is appreciated.
I think they all look really good. Dr. Trampy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On slide 10, appointing to the second or subsequent consecutive term, I believe it's actually been our practice not to require a CV if the person has been on any board or commission.
Oh, you mean not just being reappointed to the same one?
Right. I know my appointees have jumped around from one board to another. And it's been our practice that since we've already seen that person's resume for the same reason.
We can make that change.
My other question, our procedure and the school board and GWRC, PRTC, everyone I've seen, we have substitute amendments and friendly amendments. If I use the term perfecting amendment, would you know what I meant?
I'm not sure, no.
Essentially, there's a resolution on the floor. A perfecting amendment would amend the resolution without passing it. So the board votes on the perfecting amendment and still has to vote on the underlying resolution. Congress does it that way. They're the only ones I know that do it that way. I was wondering, do you know of any other jurisdiction that does that? My reason for asking is that gives the public a better understanding of what each member is voting for or against.
I don't have the answer to that tonight, but I can certainly look into it and get back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Skinner.
Yes, thank you. One of the things that I want to understand is that we're now going to submit to where it's 3 minutes per person and 5 minutes for an organization when it comes to public speaking at the public comment. I would like to propose, too, if that's covered, that many times we've seen where people come up without opposition right off the bat would like 2 extra minutes, and we've done that a couple times this year without opposition. I'd like to just keep it simple and keep it direct, that when we have public hearing, public comments, that we stay within our 3 minutes for an individual and 5 minutes for a group.
You have that in there, don't you?
Well,
Except
I want to clarify that.
It looks like it's in there, but you need a unanimous. If you have all 7 board members vote, it looks like you can go past that.
Here's the other thing is that then what I found out is nobody wants to be the bad guy to say that. And I don't think any of the 7 should be put on the spot.
I recommend we talk about it next year on this one. We're going to have to approve this next year anyway, so it's just for discussion right now.
Okay. All right.
Any other, Mr. Jakubowski?
Yeah, just one item for discussion. When it comes to agenda items and attachments that go with them, especially different presentations that are done, it seems to be a randomness of when we actually receive them. So if the agenda is set, it would be nice to have the documents with those agenda items. I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm just bringing it up to see if we can have discussion even into the new year about it, or if there's a better way to do it, just because we have so many items on the agenda. And when certain things are missing and we don't know when they show up, for instance, one of them didn't show up till yesterday, and I had looked, and you know, it's hard to prepare then for a meeting. So if we can find a better way of doing that without limiting ourselves when it comes to issues like we had tonight with the cell tower, where they had other documentation that they gave, we need to be able to be flexible enough, but then also be strict enough in the same dealings. So anyway, that's just an item that I wanted to bring up. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Okay. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
I think we should go to the Goodwill so we don't.
Right.
Donnie Tolson here, President and CEO of Rappahannock Goodwill Industries. Good evening, and thank you for the brief amount of time. I do have one of my 5 sons is an attorney, and he has informed me that it's always a good idea to follow a bylaws discussion. Now, I have an infographic. I don't know if it's already in your electronic possession or not. If not, I'd like to circulate it. You do have it. Good. And I also think there may be a video queued up. Does anybody know about that? If not, I have a flash drive. While we're waiting on that, let me tell you that Rappahannock Goodwill Industries and me, Donnie Tolson, we have great respect for this body. You know, to do what you do, it takes a great deal of passion for the community, a fair amount of courage, and from time to time a very thick hide. So, and you do your job very well. This video will consume most of my 5 minutes, and it will tell the story of Rappahannock Goodwill Industries far better than I can. And it is Amitri's story. Where's IT when you need them? Can't this not be considered part of my 5 minutes?
I have worked for Rappahannock Goodwill Industries since July 1st of 2015, and I actually work in Culpeper at the Job Health Center. I'm the follow-up specialist. And so when people complete the active phase of the program, I follow them for what we call 4 quarters after exit, to see how they're doing, to see if they're working, to see how their adjustment to work is going. It's really fulfilling because I remember what it's like to look for work and to have to go through that adjustment of going back to work. It was a morning like every other morning of my life, except I felt exceptionally tired and decided to go back and lay down. And when I woke up again, I had a horrible headache. I realized that something was terribly wrong. And what would later be found out was that I was suffering a brain aneurysm. It was a brain aneurysm that would need surgery. There was no other option to save my life. I suffered 2 strokes. After the surgery, my family found me to basically be in the condition of a small child. And they were not going to be able to take me home. And I was moved from there into rehab, where they could care for me and help me begin to regain the function I had lost. I was very confused. I had lost a lot of my short-term memory. I had long-term memory of things like from law school. I was an attorney. I still remembered the law, but I didn't remember my cases. I made an attempt to go back to work, but that didn't really work out. I learned some more about the mission of Rappahannock Goodwill Industries, helping people overcome barriers to employment. Getting the call that I got the job was overwhelming. I had gotten so used to rejection and feeling like a failure that it was unbelievable to have success and to be accepted and to be wanted. I felt like a whole person again. When I walk into the Culpeper Job Help Center, I am a valued member of a team. I don't wear anything on my shoulder that says, and by the way, she has a disability, treat her differently. That's what makes me know that RGI was the place I was meant to be.
Maitre Bean is a person of great dignity, great humility, great courage. She knows where her true north is, and she has pursued it, and she's very close to getting there.
Sometimes, you know, the victory that you're looking for doesn't come overnight. And sometimes it doesn't look like the picture you painted for yourself. But I have something that is meaningful for me and rewarding for me and gives my life meaning because I didn't give up the day before my miracle came. And that's what I encourage people is don't give up one day short of your miracle.
So Maitre Bean was our 2016 Achiever of the Year, and she will be joined this year by 1,700 other success stories. These are all people that face a variety of barriers, including disability, as was the case with Maitre. And in your infographic, we like to appear before every jurisdiction we operate in from time to time, let them know what's going on with us. And you'll see things like roughly 200 of our 730 employees are residents of the county. 180 people placed into jobs last year. This year will be probably closer to 300. We pay a lot of taxes, real estate, personal property on our 5 owned properties in the county. And we make a significant impact on the green front. But my purpose in being here is just to remind you that we're here. We're proud to be a part of the fabric of this community and helping your citizens along with citizens of neighboring jurisdictions. And the only ask I have of you is that when there are issues before you that beg for workforce development expertise and capacity, either from the employer community or from the residents themselves, you think of Goodwill. Right now, with the help of Tom Remora and the EDA and the Department of Social Services in this county and the Bay Area WIB, we're engaged in a program to help a major employer in the county who's having trouble with retaining entry-level workers. And so that's the kind of expertise and impact that we can bring to the table. Wishing you a happy holiday. If you have a question or comment, be glad to hear them and answer them. And if not, I'll take my leave and you guys can get on with your agenda.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, that brings us back to the appointed time again for public presentations.
Okay. Amy, so we have 3 public hearings tonight, so this is public presentation time. So if you're here to discuss any of the things we're going to do about public hearing, that will be at a later time. But for anything else, now is the time. Amy, has anybody signed up to speak?
Yes, sir. The first speaker is Mike Smith, followed by Larry Plating.
I'm Michael Smith. I live at 9003 Chancery Court, Spotsylvania, Virginia. Gentlemen, as you may be aware, I originally had hoped to have been on the brief earlier, but the recommendation was made to keep it to public presentation time, which I'm more than happy to do tonight. I did have a slide presentation that was submitted earlier last week, and I need about three residents of the county to help me get through the brief. So there are 3 minutes each times 3 people if needed, followed by myself, 5 minutes representing the group Fredericksburg, Virginia Patriots. We were told we could go ahead and sit down. I'll move the slides along as they speak, and I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. This is with your permission, Chairman Ross.
Yep. So this is normal procedure that we're following, correct? So
yep.
Can we bring up the floor computer?
Yeah.
And then so each speaker will have to say who they are and get 3 minutes, and Mark will time you on that.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. Do you need help with the floor computer?
I just need the presentation. Well, let me see if I can pull it up here. I don't know where it is at the moment. Okay.
Yeah, we've done it before.
The screen there. It'll
Just slideshow begin, right? From the beginning?
hit this
I got it.
over here.
And then I could just arrow it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and start. I'll bring up the first resident, Vivica Berry.
Vivica Berry, 10321 Antietam Court, Fredericksburg, Virginia. Evergreen Study Basic Information. A clarification, compensation, and benefits study for all SCPS employees. This is not all about teachers as the SCA and VEA would like you to think. Keywords: Evergreen, the study, SCPS, and division. SCPS had 2,504 full-time and 446 part-time at the time of the study. 73 departments, schools. Study started October 2016, published on the 15th of May 2017. Cost $65K. 6 chapters and 76 pages long. It is available online on the SCPS website. Thanks to Dr. Martin and Ms. Sean Gaines for answering requests for information. Study highlights and employee comments. Enjoy living and working in their hometown. Love the work and the people. Family-friendly schedules, holiday, summer, school breaks. Solid benefit packages, health and retirement. Wish to avoid a commute. Proud and possess self-satisfaction. Opportunities for advancement, giving back to the community. Working for the SCPS, especially as a teacher, is a lifestyle choice. Next, employee outreach for the study. Issues not related to the amount of pay employees receive and include compression, step system, starting salaries, service credit, substitute pay, options on how to be paid, pay for added duties, recruitment, and retention. The study is not just about pay. Position clarification is an area of concern. SCPS needs to successfully hire talent and fill vacancies. Recommendation: focus on critical issues of concern. A significant number of issues were identified for SCPS to review, address, and solve. 7 months since the release of the study, and no response from SCPS. Quality benefits. In general, employees are happy with their health and retirement benefits. Page 2 to 8. Teaching is a chosen profession, and working for SCPS is a lifestyle choice. 225 students of employees living outside of Spotsylvania attending SCPS this year. Cost versus benefit. It is a benefit, and there's a cost associated with allowing 225 out-of-county students to attend SCPS. Recommendations: recognize shortcomings and implement solutions. correct weaknesses in compensation and classification prior to the start of FY19.
Excuse me, are we at the 3 minutes or are we
You
still?
have 6 seconds.
Okay, then we'll continue to the next speaker. It'll be Michael Berry.
That first sentence.
Michael Berry, 10321 Antietam Court, Fredericksburg, Virginia. The current conditions on the compensation system. There are too many salary schedules. There are 17. There are unduplicated job titles at 229. There are 1,811 teachers. There are 378 bus drivers of the Transportation Division, and a total of 396 employees. And a full assessment is included in Chapter 3 of the study. Correct inequalities for both full-time and part-time employees. Bring those who are part of the inequality to equality across the employee groups. So that's one of our recommendations. Grade placement analysis. This is one area of review regarding salaries and compensation. Bring the 259 employees up from grade minimum to the grade midpoint. Hold the 29 employees at grade maximum for FY19. 2,781 employees are good at grade midpoint, considered to be the salary an individual could reasonably expect for similar work in the market. A positive relationship exists between tenure and pay. Our recommendation is to improve the compensation structure effective for FY19. Fix the inequalities for FY19. The market minimums. There are 6 positions totaling 104 employees that are greater than 10% below the market minimums. And that's on page 4 to 8 of the study. The market midpoints. There are 7 positions totaling 98 employees that are greater than 10% below market midpoints. And that's on page 4 through 8 and page 9. A lack of bus aides and attendants is a major safety concern for the Spotsylvania County Public School System. Market maximums. 22 positions totaling 664 employees are greater than 10% ahead of the market at maximum. And a special note on this slide, a majority of the positions are related to paraeducators, special education, general education, social workers, school psychologists, school counselor, reading specialists, and speech language pathologists. Salary survey results. Spotsylvania County Public School System is paying entry-level teachers near market averages, whereas teacher salaries at the midpoint and maximum levels are above market. Substitute hourly rates paid by Spotsylvania County Public School System are higher than peer averages for those same positions. In general, the majority of the Spotsylvania County Public School System...
Your time's elapsed, sir.
As stated earlier, my name is Michael Smith. I'm representing the Fredericksburg, Virginia Patriots, and I'll use the remaining 5 minutes to finish up the slides here. In general, the majority of the employees' benchmark positions shown in the exhibit of 4A of the study are at or above market averages at all levels. Exhibit 4A in the study lists 65 classifications, includes principals, assistant principals, teachers, paraeducators, and secretaries. Clearly, a majority of the total SCPS employee population. Benefits survey. The schools provide benefits to full and part-time employees. The benefits are found to be comparable to the market with respect to the benefits portion of total compensation, and the recommendations continue to provide the high-quality benefits that you're already providing. Evergreen study recommendations. This is from the Evergreen study itself. There were 4 major recommendations made. Recommendation number 1, you can look it up. We're recommending partial approval of items 1 through 4. The Evergreen study recommendation number 2, there are 3 salary options. There are 3 costs associated with this. One is the $177,000 solution. One is closer to $3.5 million, and the other one is closer to $7 million. FBP is recommending full approval of the bring to minimum option for FY19 at a cost of $177,000. Evergreen recommendation 3, adopt the job assessment tool. This is a tool used for what it just stated. Evergreen study recommendation 4, conduct the next study in 2020. Here's some final FVP thoughts. The Evergreen study provided good information and prevents quality recommendations to improve the schools. The schools need to review the findings and present their recommendations to the Board of Supervisors and all other stakeholders, to include parents and taxpayers. They should identify those areas and be immediately improved or fixed over a stated period of time. They need to review the division's weaknesses presented in the Evergreen study, identify solutions, and the cost of implementing those. Final FBP recommendations. Create the FY19 schools budget with the same budgeted amount as FY18, which was a significant amount of money. Consider increased employee contributions to benefit cost in order to improve compensation and salary for FY19. Examine and execute cost-cutting measures and efficiencies in all departments and schools in support of a balanced budget. At last month's Board of Supervisors meeting, the Board of Supervisors reached out to the school board to discuss the topic of cost-cutting and efficiencies between the schools and county. Several members of the school board pushed back and provided excuses for not even starting a dialogue on this topic. After 30 minutes, they agreed to a 1 June 2018 date, but it was lukewarm and half-hearted at best. I have personally reached out to the Spotsylvania Education Association representative at the Spotsylvania County Candidates Forum on 23 October at the Salem Church Library, provided my name, my contact information, and asked if they would like to discuss the Evergreen study with me, and I have not received any response from them. Fredericksburg, Virginia Patriots has a history of reviewing both the schools and county budgets, and we will continue to do so because the taxpayers of Spotsylvania County want us to, and we won't be silenced by a handful of selfish and greedy groups. Spotsylvania County had a budget surplus of $12 million for the FY17 budget period ending on 30 June 2017. This equates to a 9-cent reduction in property taxes or a reduction in other county taxes to include the personal property tax. To the question of whether we are taxed enough already, the answer remains yes. It is our sincere desire to find common ground and good agreement in the Evergreen study with the schools, with the SEA, and all other stakeholders, which can be implemented in order to improve the schools and make it the #1 public school division in Virginia. Our students deserve the best we can give them. I appreciate the opportunity to brief this. Previously, in addition to this PowerPoint, you have about a 7 or 8 page summary that was submitted as well with a little more information, a little more detail. I encourage you to look over the Evergreen study, and if you don't have that time, review the summary that I gave you, the 7 or 8 pages, and you can always refer back. We're available to answer any questions, and we appreciate the efforts of the Board of Supervisors in the FY19 budget planning, and now and in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Larry Plating, followed by Judy Lawrence.
My name is Larry Plating. I live at 1511 Candlewood Street, Fredericksburg, Virginia, 22407. I watched the CDC presentation last month, and I actually would draw your attention to the stapled piece of paper in front of you, which is a copy of that same graph that they showed. Unfortunately, the CDC failed to mention that tooth decay rates have precipitously declined in all Western countries, irrespective of whether the country ever fluoridated its water. Indeed, most Western countries do not fluoridate their water, and yet their tooth decay rates have declined at the same rate as the U.S. and other fluoridated countries. You can see that represented if you flip the paper over, look at the back there are both fluoridated and non-fluoridated countries graph shown on the first, on the back of the page. And you'll notice they all go down to less than one cavity, just like the CDC study. So it begs the question as to whether fluoridating the water even has any beneficial effect at all, because most of this is probably due to knowledge, better nutrition, better health practices on the part of the individual, not on the part of the country fluoridating the water. So I would commend you to this website that's below that graph, and there's 3 other graphs that actually show the fluoridation and for fluoride countries and for no fluoride countries, and a mixture thereof. The other piece of paper I bring to your attention is studies on tooth decay rates after water fluoridation is stopped. For decades, the American Dental Association has long warned that if communities end their water fluoridation programs, the rate of tooth decay will increase. Now, as it turns out, there's 4 countries that have done that: Canada, Finland, Germany, and Cuba. All of them have ceased fluoridation, and guess what? Nothing has happened. The tooth decay is still way down as it was before they were fluoridating. So there is no beneficial effect of fluoride in the water, only negative effects, as were spelled out last month by Mrs. Taylor and myself. So I wish that you would consider to stop wasting the money that we're spending on putting fluoride in the water and find a better use for it, because according to these 2 pieces of paper, which you can find online yourself if you go to the Fluoride Alert org
Sir,
site.
your time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Please come up. Yes, sir.
Judy Lawrence, followed by Anthony LaFaro.
Hi, my name is Judy Lawrence. I live at 11503 Warner Drive, Fredericksburg 22407. I decided to come here tonight when I read that the Tea Party once again was starting on their every year, let's criticize the school budget. I do not work for Spotsylvania County or the schools. I'm just a parent whose daughter graduated with honors at Chancellor High School and is very, very successful in life. And I want to remind the board that every time this happens, it ends up we worry about our schools. Our schools have to be the best. You want to keep bringing people into this county, you will do something with the schools. You will not cut. The teachers are not that well paid. I don't know where they're getting that. Stafford County is bleeding teachers because they've made promises about raises and haven't given it. We do not want to be bleeding teachers. We want to find ways to keep our teachers and not every year have everybody deciding if we're going to save money in Spotsylvania County, let's do it on the backs of the schools. That's not the way a well-run county runs. We care about our schools. The children are our future. We don't want to end up like Alabama. That's all I have to say.
Anthony LaFaro, followed by Debbie Kersey.
Every year we're going to go through this again. I mean, aside from the highly gray area of Mr. Smith's presentation, we really got to continue to just start every budget session leading up with just diminishing schools. This evergreen study should have been about putting this to rest so that we aren't having unsavory debates every year. And members of this board allowed this group to make a presentation diminishing the true intentions of that report. And their recommendations are ridiculous because they're putting educators in the school system as a whole on a different plane than the county employees by wanting it implemented at a later date And by wanting to implement it at the lowest point possible instead of the mid-range, and showing a great level of disingenuity, which the members of this Board of Supervisors that are also members of this Tea Party group should be ashamed of themselves for being a part of, because it's disingenuous. It is not what the county wants. We do not want to keep hearing presentations from them. I'm not a teacher. I'm married to one, and that's why I know how hard they work. And this is just getting ridiculous year in, year out. And you know what? Where was the Tea Party when the majority of this board was constantly approving rezoning at net negative revenues, which is going to cost us a lot of money over the next 20 years, which is going to have us bleeding red ink? Where were they when you were spending our money on that, committing to spend our money on that? Nowhere. Supporting you. Because this was never about saving money. It's about bashing schools because of this ridiculous school choice movement, which has a lot of falsehoods in it. You can look at the money being spent in California for students going to schools that are teaching Scientology right now on vouchers from our tax money. Yeah, that's what you want? Okay, great. How about we start acting like adults? How about we start focusing on actual improvements in our school systems, not every which way to defund them, and discredit educators on the way? When are the members of this board associated with that group? I'm looking at you. I'm looking dead at you. When are you going to start acting like the leaders that you should be? Because I tell you right now, if you go into the budget meeting in late winter and you advertise a rate that doesn't make implementing the Evergreen study the same way for the schools that you did for the rest of the county, there's going to be a lot of voices. We will not tolerate that. And you know what? We won't tolerate you using one-time funds to do it every year again and depleting our strategic reserves, because that is not plausible long-term. You made a commitment you couldn't keep by saying that you would keep the tax rate equalized, which is impossible even if you don't give educators or cops or firefighters a raise ever again, because costs go up. That's what happens in the real world. But you promised it anyway. Now you can't keep those promises, and you want to blame it on teachers. Well, look at yourselves in the mirror.
Sir, your time has elapsed. Thank you.
Yeah, I normally don't respond, but I did. There are no members on this board, sir, that are members of the Tea Party. So for the record. Okay, though I'm not sure what Facebook page you're referring to, but that's not true, and that's why I'm addressing it right now.
It's true. You call me a liar.
I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying you've been misinformed. We also finished this year with a $12 million surplus. So, thank you.
Debbie Kersey.
Anybody else?
There are no other citizens signed up to speak.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak at this time? Thank you.
Good evening. Gentlemen, my name is Jean Bergeron. I live in the Kingswood subdivision in the Battlefield District. I am a teacher at Riverbend High School. I am a veteran of the United States Coast Guard, and I am the president of the Spotsylvania Education Association. I will be speaking to you tonight on behalf of the SEA. I mentioned that I'm a veteran because, like many, I felt a call to service. I have served this country during my military career, and I continue to serve as an educator. Recently, the following statement was made regarding educators. Individuals are free to choose their professions with the full understanding of the compensation and benefits available. Military members used to say, we joined the military not for the pay, but for the benefits. And no one ever gets rich in the military. The same can be said for the majority of Spotsylvania County public school employees. That statement appeared in the local newspaper recently, spoken by the Fredericksburg, Virginia Patriots' Mike Smith. What Mr. Smith failed to recognize is that while both are service-oriented professions, the military and education are vastly different. This correlation creates a false equivalency. Having served in both, I feel that I'm uniquely qualified to make that statement. In the military, a housing allowance was provided. We were able to shop at subsidized grocery stores. We had our health care provided for us and our spouses. We were able to use subsidized base recreation services. The same cannot be said for educators. They exist in vastly different universes. Service members absolutely deserve the benefits they receive and should never be demonized for them. Let me repeat that. Service members deserve their benefits and should not be demonized for them. The same can be said for educators. The school division undertook the Evergreen study last year upon urging by the county. The school is a far more complex entity than the county government side. We have more employees and employee classifications. Yes, there is room for improvement, and I am confident that our elected school board can examine the areas for improvement and implement changes. Through this recession, our school board has made many difficult changes and has continued with our mission of educating our children. Tonight, you have also heard from the Citizens Budget Review Committee. The CBRC is comprised of appointed volunteers. There has been great debate at CBRC meetings regarding out-of-county students. Ms. Dennis, Mr. McLaughlin's appointee, is vehemently opposed to allowing tuition-free education of these students. During the last CBRC meeting, when it was brought up that staff would be lost if we charged tuition, Ms. Dennis is on record as saying, "But we won't have them to educate." Her statement is in reference to the 225 children of out-of-county staff. These 225 students comprise 9 1,000% of the entire school division. Again, that's 0.009% of all students. The CBRC often seeks quantifiable data, and members have said that staff leaving if tuition is charged is not quantifiable. Well, SEA reached out to our out-of-county members and did a poll. Almost 40% of those who responded stated that tuition would be the deciding factor of them leaving employment with SCPS. Another 30% responded that they are not sure but would likely quit. That is 70% of this segment that will leave. Given a teacher shortage, we should be looking to retain all employees, not have an appointed group micromanage what our elected officials are tasked to do. Did you know that many of the teachers with out-of-county students have advanced degrees, including doctorates in education? They include nationally board certified teachers, as you heard tonight. Many serve as leaders in the school community. Did you know that their students are scholar athletes? These are quantifiable facts. Mr. Benton, last week you stated in a Facebook post that CBRC has saved the county and schools $0, and that any savings by the group is not quantifiable. What is the cost of the CBRC? How many staff hours have been used to answer many questions from CBRC? How much staff productivity has been lost to CBRC field trips? Mr. Ross, you attended one. You toured the schools last spring. Mr. Benton, were you aware that your appointee, Mr. Hansen, toured the school's maintenance facility to examine efficiencies in maintenance? Mr. McLaughlin.
Ma'am, your time has elapsed.
May I ask for another 30 seconds? That, or I can have somebody give me time.
I can finish the statement since that's the precedent that you set tonight.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead. Your name and address, please.
Jennifer Toit. I work with the Spotsylvania Education Association.
And your address, please, ma'am.
6147 Ridgemont Drive.
In what city?
I am in Centerville.
Thank you.
What is the cost of the CBRC? How many staff hours have been used to answer the many questions from CBRC? How much staff productivity has been lost to your CBRC field trips? Mr. Ross, you attended one. Mr. McLaughlin. Catherine Dennis attended a tour to the fire station to understand the differences in fire trucks. Were you aware of that? In fact, she and a former CBRC member joked about a field trip during the August CBRC meeting. Gentlemen, where is your oversight? I ask you all, if these savings are not quantifiable, what is the benefit of this group? The SEA will also request access to the floor computer to provide a slide presentation next month. As a citizen, veteran educator, president of the SAA, and voter, Ms. Bergeron's faith in her elected school is in her elected school board and not in the recommendations of your appointed group. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that did not sign up to speak that would like to speak at this time? Okay, we'll close public presentation time. Now, we can go to board reports, or do we need a recess, or what's the board want to do? Or we can go to public hearings. Board reports? Okay. Yep. Mr. Yakubowski, anything for board reports?
Yes, a couple things. There are two studies that I had mentioned earlier about consolidation studies that were done, one from the county and one from Stafford, 2005 for the county, 2015 for Stafford. I'll post them on my Facebook page, so if people need the link, they can take a look at that. Secondly, I wasn't going to say anything about it, but you know, here we go again. Once again, we have a budget season that's coming up. We have fighting. It's just starting. It's unnecessary. This is so unnecessary. And I will tell you, the misinformation that goes on out there really needs to stop. The other thing that's very annoying to me, and I think that this board and members owe the public an explanation of what happened, was having the Patriots on the agenda and then having it pulled. There were three different explanations given in the newspaper account of that. And trust me, I've been misrepresented by the newspaper quote, so I'm not holding you to complete account by those, but I do think that there is an explanation that is owed to the public of why did that happen. Mr. Taylor said one thing, Mr. Ross said another, and Mr. Benton said a complete and different third thing. Why that even showed up on the agenda is beyond me. We basically had a presentation. I don't know what the difference between having it on the agenda and doing what was presented here tonight is, but now the door is open, and I'm sure we will be having these things going back and forth. But I would just ask everybody to please please calm down. We can discuss these things in a rational way and without any acrimony and nastiness, because it's unnecessary. It doesn't produce anything. We as a board have set up the CBRC. It was an idea from many years ago and has been around for 5 or so years. And I do think that there is a role for them to play. I'm just not sure if if they have gotten to that point yet. I'm concerned about some of the ways that they are looking at big picture when we as a board don't even look at big picture because we don't control those dollars. We control just the general fund, and that's all. So I would just please ask both sides to please, you know, calm down, and as we have the budget discussions next year, everybody will have an opportunity to speak, be heard, and during that time, I'm also going to announce another town hall meeting, as I've done in the past with Mr. Braswell. And I would encourage people to come out. At the last one that we had 5 citizens show up from my district, and 5 that weren't. So if you want to get your point across and discuss, I'm more than happy to talk with anybody. But I would ask that at board meetings we try to be as civil as we possibly can. Thank you.
Well said. Mr. Sebula.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to end on a little happier note. This is my last board meeting. I've served this community for 4 years. I've enjoyed doing every minute of it. I've attended every board meeting. I feel really strongly that the position of county supervisor is a full-time position and ought to be compensated accordingly. That way people don't come in late from work, come into board meetings, miss board meetings because of other pay obligations, other jobs. I believe in order to serve this county, you need to do it on a full-time basis. And as I say, I've enjoyed it. I want to wish everybody in this county a Merry Christmas and a very blessed New Year. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Sabula, if you don't mind, if you could come here for a second. I have something to give you on behalf of the board. It's an appreciation of dedicated service to the citizens of Spotsylvania County as a member of the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors, Berkeley District, from 2014 to 2017. Thank you very much, sir, for your service.
Thank you.
Nothing
to report.
Mr. Benton.
I was going to say no report, but I will say a few things. Number one, I am not a member of a Tea Party, and I will concur with Mr. Yakubowski to a degree. Yeah, we need to try to control our emotions. We're not even a step into the process hardly as far as this board and the budget discussions. I know Mr. Taylor's putting together his. I'm sure Dr. Baker's putting together his. But, you know, what we got to realize also, everybody has the right to their opinions, and Lord knows everybody has opinions. Just because a person comes up here and says stuff doesn't necessarily mean we agree or disagree. We may be somewhere in the middle. Who knows? But I am tired of all the attacks and the accusations that I'm a member of a Tea Party. I'm not, again. And I wish people could just act a little bit more civilly and more professionally, especially that when they're representing groups and putting only partial statements out. And I'll just leave it like that. It's probably best little to nothing said. But anyway, Merry Christmas to all. I hope everybody has a very safe, blessed, and Merry Christmas and a New Year. And thank you for coming out.
Thank you. Dr. Trampy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take a moment to thank Mr. Sabula for his service to the county and commend him for his hard work. I know he did treat it like a full-time job, and he was out there working for his constituents at least 40 hours a week, maybe more. And I know you've served the county in other ways. Hopefully it won't be controversial to bring up the CBRC from 6 years ago, but I know that my first year on this board, you were chairman of the CBRC, and that and you all helped me a great deal my first year on the board, especially. So with that, I'll thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Mr. Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to thank Greg for being a friend to me and being a friend to this county. And you've had a lot more experience prior to your 4 years on the supervisor and what you've done. And I just want to say thank you for your hard work. And I know that every decision you made always was for the best of the county. And I appreciate that very much. And I wish you best of luck. And whether you come back and doing something else for a county, I got a feeling you will. You'll find a way to be involved. And I do appreciate that very much. So thank you. And going on to another subject, everybody's talked about it. You know, we're the board. We should maintain the control. And that's what I'm saying about the process. You know, too many times people will try to manipulate the board, and I don't want this board to lose control. And I think that as we go forward as a board, as you said, Mr. Ross, in the beginning of the year, we need to very seriously talk about what's equal for one person is going to be followed by a group. Doesn't matter what group they pertain to, because everybody has a right to speak, okay? Everybody. But we have to keep it consistent. And that's what I'd like to work on in the New Year's resolution, to make sure that we don't have certain things happening out here. And that's our responsibility. That's what we elected for. Not only do we run the county as far as the budget and stuff of this, we should be running how these meetings go. And at least we give the chairman a direction or a guideline to use, whatever chairman it is, okay, to run, because that is his responsibility. And I say that for any chairman whatsoever, okay? I do want to wish everybody out in the county a happy holiday and a happy New Year's in the future, and be safe, and hopefully we'll see everybody back in January at our next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very welcome. So I've got a couple things to say. So Spotsylvania County 2017, kind of a cap off. So again, Merry Christmas to everybody, but I'm going to take a few minutes to just kind of highlight some of the things that have happened this year. For one, we created a lot of new business. So with Lidl was 200 jobs in the grocery. Flatter & Associates, 21 jobs. RPI, 8 jobs. HDT, again, professional jobs, 49. And then in manufacturing, Universal Dynamics, 170 jobs, and IDX, which every board member got. This is kind of cute, if you can see it. I'm not sure if it'll show up on the camera, but it's s'more jobs for in Spotsylvania County. So these are s'mores, marshmallows. It's kind of cute. So a total of almost 600 jobs, 598. New jobs in the county rose 2.5%, exceeding new job growth across the state of 1.4%. Unemployment rate in Spotsylvania County is down to 3.8%. That's down from 6.5% in 2012. We added 23 and 2/3 new public safety positions, 5 court deputies, 6 patrol deputies, 3 detectives, 2 part-time desk deputies. That's just this year. 1 new assistant Commonwealth attorney was added to our budget, EMS training coordinator, a mechanic, a rider for apparatus, 1 adult protective service supervisor added to DSS and 1 part-time. 6 firefighter medics added in August to address the base staffing levels at Company 5. FREM, it's not much, but it's in the right direction. Cut average response time by 18 seconds in urban areas and by 16 seconds in rural areas. We added 2 and 2/3 new non-public safety positions. Transfer to schools in the 2017 budget increased by $2.7 million. That included a one-time transfer from the general fund of $333,000. Transportation projects are probably too many for me to list here, but we've got the Harrison Road Route 1 intersection we talked about tonight, Hickory Ridge Route 1 intersection, Jones Powell Road improvements, Massaponax Church Road improvements. We have the Route 3 190 or I-95 interchange ongoing right now. We've approved the Thornton Rolling Road light and the 126 South Point exit to South Point has been approved, and it should be, as we heard tonight, on its way. I know the Route 3 light sinking got improved again, and again, southbound travel across the I-95, the Rappahannock Bridge got approved as well. Our tax rate remained unchanged. I think tonight we might be able to do the approval of an increase in BPOL threshold from $750,000 to $1 million. So we met all our funding guidelines to improve a new budget stability reserve fund that we have done, and going from 10% to 11% as well. We've launched the county's information transparency website, implemented planning webpage, and access rezoning and special use permit information. We've increased who we notify of special use applications. We've implemented web-based enrollment for our employee benefits, implemented electronic timesheets, conducted and started implementation of the Evergreen study on the county side, and hopefully the schools too will be coming, a $12 million fiscal year surplus, and a couple more. So I think we've had a good year. So I'd like to end on a positive note, and Merry Christmas to everybody. And with that, we'll go into public hearings.
And Mr. Chairman, board members, the first public hearing is to amend the BPOL license ordinance. That's section 11.1-3 of the county code. Ms. Williams is here, and as she's approaching, I'll explain that this is the ordinance amendment necessary to implement for calendar year 18 upcoming the change in the threshold for the BPOL tax from $750,000 to $1 million, and that was considered and approved on a planning basis with the budget, and this is the implementation of that plan. Good evening, Ms. Williams.
Good evening and Merry Christmas. As Mr. Taylor indicated, we are going to have a public hearing tonight. We are amending business license section 11.1.3 and 11.1-10. The first one is to increase the threshold from $750,000 to $1 million, which means businesses under $1 million will not be required to have a business license. But they will be required to pay on business property tax, so don't want them to get confused about those two items. And then the other one is sort of a housekeeping. In the past, we've exempted the first $50,000, and we're taking that out of the code. So at your pleasure, we'll have the public hearing, and if y'all will vote.
Okay.
Thank
Are there
you.
any questions before we go to public hearing? Okay, Amy, has anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Is there anybody that's not signed up to speak that would like to speak at this time about the B-poll? Okay, we'll close public hearing. I have a motion from the board.
Move to approve.
Okay. Move. Any other discussion? We'll call the question.
Seven, yes.
Thank you. Next item is R17-0007, which is Afton, a project in the Battlefield District.
Good evening. While I load up the presentation, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone.
You too, Patrick.
Thank you very much. I have a brief PowerPoint, and the applicant has a brief PowerPoint to follow mine. As noted, R17-7 is the Afton rezoning. It's a request to rezone 18.9 acres from residential 1 to PDH 2 with proffers for a 29-lot development. The proposed rezoning would be for 5 parcels, which are all located within the primary development boundary, are designated low-density residential development, and are located within the Battlefield voting district. Staff is recommending approval with proffers dated October 18th, 2017, and the Planning Commission recommended approval on November 15th with a vote of 6-1. The parcels are shown in red before you. They are 750 feet west of the intersection of Mine Road and Lansdowne. An existing electrical substation is located immediately east of the property and highlighted with a little yellow orange circle. The Mine Road Convenience Center is located immediately southeast across Mine Road. The proposed properties are all zoned R1, as are all properties in the immediate area. The applicants proffered a GDP, or Generalized Development Plan, shown before you. The proposal consists of a 29-lot neighborhood and an additional lot, a lot 29, which I've highlighted in green. So there's a total of 29 lots. 28 of them are all accessed by the same road. Lot 29 will retain its access from an existing private drive. That private roadway is called Auburn Lane. I've drawn a little arrow here. It services other lots and is not proposed to be removed. You'll also see on this image a small triangle in the top left corner, which indicates a portion of the Battle of Fredericksburg II historical area. No improvements are proposed within this area. It lies within what is referred to as Parcel C, which is a large open space parcel. You can see the label for Parcel C is right here, and it encompasses all of this area. The 28 lots proposed in the neighborhood range in size from 6,000 to 12,000 square feet. They're all accessed from basically 2 proposed VDOT maintained roadways, the spine and an additional little stub road. The spine will connect at Mine Road. The spur off of it will provide future access to the neighboring property to the west should it be developed in the future. The spur was required by Virginia Department of Transportation in accordance with their secondary street acceptance requirement program. Residents and guests driving to this neighborhood will have both a right turn lane or a left turn lane depending on their approach into the property. Both of those turn lanes will consist of a 100-foot storage with a 100-foot taper. These internal streets will have dual sidewalks, and a frontage sidewalk is also provided by the applicant, as are right-of-way dedications to accommodate these turn lanes and for future improvements within the right-of-way of Mine Road, which is envisioned to be 125 feet wide right-of-way. A 20-foot street buffer B is also proposed along the frontage of the development in accordance with county codes. Using the sheriff's crash data, we were able to determine that this stretch of roadway is not a high accident location. There's an estimated 310 vehicle trips that would result from this development and the future development of that property connected with the spur. Staff believes that these are mitigated, and the flow of traffic on Mine Road should be okay with the new turn lanes that are proposed and the tapers. This slide summarizes the comp plan analysis of the project. The development was found to be generally consistent with land use, transportation, public facilities, historic resources, natural resources. The applicant has proffered contributions to fire and parks and rec services in accordance with Virginia codes. Staff is confident that the contributions are legally acceptable. Staff did observe impacts which exceeded capacity thresholds at Fire Station 4 and the Massaponax High School. However, no proffer could be sought due to the new proffer legislation. The applicants provided a fiscal impact analysis reporting that the development should generate $44,000 annually in revenue to the county. The county has its own model. We ran our model, which predicted an annual deficit of $28,000. It's important to note that these models frequently differ. They're based on different assumptions, and the applicants typically take into account more off-site and spin-off effects, notably off-site job generation from the additional on-site residence demands for products and services. The proffers proposed by the applicant include conformance with the GDP, the restriction of PDH secondary uses, homeowners associations and covenants, the right-in turning lane, and the dedication of open space. The applicant has also proposed off-site proffers, which were analyzed and found legally acceptable in accordance with the new proffer regulations. The proposed proffers include $46.38 per unit towards a new fire rescue training center and $116.13 per unit to a series of parks and rec facility improvements. The total contribution proposed is $2,600.16. Staff reviewed the application and found the following. The project is generally consistent with the comp plan. The applicant's proffered cash contributions, which meet the Virginia Code, and the applicant's proposed right-in and left-in turn lane should allow safe and clear traffic movements from mine. Staff also found that the financial impact model predicted a deficit of $28,000, although the applicant's model predicts a surplus of $44,000 when including the off-site spinoff effects. The project will increase attendees to Massaponax High by 5 students. That school's identified as overcapacity. It's possible that the property may contain archaeological resources, particularly in that corner. However, a cultural resources study was not conducted. And lastly, while it's unfortunate that Lot 29 is disassociated from the current proposed Afton neighborhood, Auburn Lane is providing access to additional properties beyond Lot 29 and thus likely to remain. Staff's recommending approval of this case. I did receive one letter from an abutting neighbor, the Diners, real fast. They live here, where my mouse is pointing. The next lot to the south is also owned by the power company, and then, of course, there's the substation. With that, I will stand by for your questions, and thank you for your time.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Benton.
This may be better for the applicant, but what's the average selling cost for these homes?
Let's let the applicant answer that one.
All right. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, the applicant has 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and other members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Charlie Payne with the law firm Herschel Fleischer, and we represent the applicant. Just one quick point of clarification. The Diener's letter is in support. I think Patrick meant to say that, but just want to make sure we clarify that.
It was in support.
And I do have a brief PowerPoint, and I appreciate staff's presentation. I'm just going to reiterate a few key points and answer some questions, including Mr. Benton's question. And Patrick, if you could help me, I'd appreciate it. As staff has noted, the property consists of 5 parcels that we've combined here for about a total of close to 19 acres. It is located along Mine Road. just west of the intersection of Mine Road and Lansdowne Road. I'm sure you're all familiar with that location. It currently is zoned R1, and we're requesting a PDH2. Under a PDH2, you can get 2 units to the acre. You can see that we're proposing something less than that, at about 1.5 units to the acre. Your comprehensive plan for low-density residential in this area actually encourages 4 units to the acre. So overall, a very low-dense and intense project. PDH obviously encourages single-family detached units. We are preserving about 41% of the property as open space, and I'll get to the GDP and explain that in more detail. It's about 8 acres. We are anticipating in the current market, if this is approved, it'll take about 3 years for full build-out. And by right, we could do 13 single-family units, so we're looking at a net 16 additional units for this proposal. The surrounding area, again, very similar to what we're proposing. West of us is single-family detached and residential units known as Lee's headquarters. To our south, across from the Mine Road, is vacant land, but also Lee's Hill is over there. And Lee's Hill actually has a greater density than we do, about 1.7 units to the acre. East of us is land owned by Virginia Electric Power Company, as well as a residential subdivision, which many of you probably know is Artillery Ridge. And then north is vacant land and single-family homes. And you'll see in our GDP that we're extensively buffering our surrounding neighbors. No wetlands or streams on the site, so this is for purposes of cultural resources and environmental impacts. The property does not have any cultural resources other than what staff had noted. A small portion of Parcel C, which is our open space, is included in the Battle of Fredericksburg Historic Overlay District near the rear, and that will not be disturbed or cleared. As staff had noted, this project is very much consistent with the comprehensive plan. It is low-density residential in this area, which encourages single-family attached and detached. This is a single-family detached project. Again, our proposed density is about 1.5 units to the acre. Under that, your comprehensive plan encourages 4 units to the acre. It is located within your primary development boundary, which will allow us to connect to public utilities. And here's a photo of the slide of the GDP. To our north, you'll see all the open space there. That is part of Parcel 29. So it allows us, and just in addition to what staff had noted about preserving Auburn Lane for access from our other neighbors who live along that road, which is why we're leaving it open and kind of carving out 29. But 29 also allows us to provide all that additional open space, as you see there, to buffer ourselves even further from our neighbors. So that's one of the other reasons why that's there. I'm also, if you can go back, Patrick, and I'll reiterate this a little bit more, but you know, always Mine Road considerations is making sure that we have turn lanes into this project versus straight driveways, et cetera, of other which have sort of plagued that area in the past. But we'll have a left and a right turn lane into this project. Next slide. I'm sorry, Patrick. Thank you. Fiscal benefits. Mr. Benton had asked this question. The price range for these homes would be $300,000 to $350,000 on average. Home size average would be about 2,500 square feet finished above grade. The project would generate, it does have some positive fiscal impacts. We had about 59 jobs off-site in the county. That's after full build-out, which will result in about $1.6 million in annual employee earnings. We analyze, staff's model only analyzes on-site tax revenue generation and cost. And typically, as you all know, that generation analysis is based on your assessed values. We look at sales values in our analysis as well as off-site spinoff. So folks who move into these communities in your county typically spend 65 to 70% of their income in your county. So the off-site tax revenue that's generated should, in our opinion, be included as well, and that number is $44,000 based on a fairly conservative estimate. The schools in our location will be Spotswood Elementary, Battlefield Middle, and Massaponack High Schools. Based on the county school systems analysis, these single-family detached units generate a little more than half a student per household. And we're anticipated to generate about 16 total school-age kids from the development. If you look at the by right generation number, that'd be about 8 students with our 13 by right. There is existing and adequate capacity to accommodate the projected students. Transportation, as I stated earlier, access to the property will be from Mine Road. Applicant will provide both left and right turn lanes from Mine Road. We're also dedicating, which I know is really important to the county for purposes of any future improvements to Mine Road, because the most expensive thing is acquisition. We are dedicating right-of-way of about 125 feet in width along our property line. And I'm sorry, Patrick, real quick, I apologize. The 29 units will generate very low traffic activity, 22 peak hour trips in the morning and about 29 in the evening. Public safety, the proposal will have a minimal impact on the county's fire and rescue facilities. Fire and Rescue Station 4 will service this area. It's about 1.5 miles away. New stations are not planned until 2021, but there is a fire and rescue training center that will be completed in 2018, and we are contributing that for purposes of proffers, and we have proffered cash to offset those impacts. As I stated earlier, our proffers also includes a right turn lane off Mine Road, which includes a 100-foot storage and a 100-foot taper, and we are providing a left turn lane off of Mine Road into the development. And as I stated earlier, we're providing additional right-of-way dedication, which includes almost 2 acres. Cash proffers, as you see there, are over $2,600, and both addressing public safety and Parks and Rec, which, pursuant to the new code, were the only things that we would impact. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for the applicant?
And Mr. Benton, did I answer your question on the?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. If no questions, we'll open up public hearing time. Amy, has anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is anybody that didn't sign up to speak that would like to speak about this development at this time? Okay. Well. Okay. Sure. Just got in under the wire.
Okay, thanks. My name is Bill Rawlings. I live at 1814 Artillery Ridge, which is directly on the other side of Artillery Ridge from the homes that are adjacent. I heard sir talk about that there's no creeks or things along those lines. Well, there's a runoff from this property that runs through my property. It goes under the road, under Artillery Ridge, and runs along the southern border of my property. I moved into the house 2 years ago. It's a 100-year floodplain area, and since then we've had 4 floods, 2 of which that came down Battery Lane, all 4 which flooded the entire yard, 2 of which that came down Battery Lane, crossed the road, and proceeded to take out my front yard. Fortunately, knock on wood, it hasn't affected the house, but the entire yard is covered. So the reason I bring that point up is not that I have an issue with growth or adding to, but just so long as there's a consideration in there for the extra water that's going to come. You know, when you have open land, obviously it has the ability to absorb that and to help with some of those flooding issues. When you start putting in asphalt and you know, asphalt roofs and things along those lines, if there isn't a sufficient plan in place to do something about the water. We've yet to have a hurricane, but you know, just the heavy rains that we've had have already caused flooding for myself and several of my neighbors. So I just ask that there is some kind of consideration for what will happen when we put in all these new homes, that there's sufficient capacity to handle excess water so that it doesn't further increase the flow that comes down and runs through my neighbor and myself's yards, you know, causing more issues along the way. That's all I really had to say.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. The applicant has 5 more minutes.
Mr. Chairman and other members of the board, my name is Charlie Payne, the law firm Hersher Fleischer, and appreciate your time this evening. I promise you I won't take up your 5 minutes. Just to answer the gentleman's question, obviously by state code and county ordinance, we're required to control and capture and discharge, according to state code, our water. So that will be done on this site. So hopefully that would eliminate the problems you're having now. I'm sure it will, but that's obviously something that we're required to do. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Benton.
As usual. I'll just say mostly concerns. You know, 29 vehicles, 22 vehicles doesn't seem like much, but Mine Road is a very busy road, to be quite honest. I use it quite frequently going down towards Route 2. So, you know, there's no turn off of mine into your subdivision into it or out of it?
Both.
Only one direction.
There's a left turn lane in and a right turn lane in as well.
So you're providing a left turn in
Yes, sir.
from Mine Road?
Yes, sir.
Is that coming which direction? Both directions?
Left turn is coming south. No, west. Going east.
It's only one
It's
direction.
going, the left turn lane is going east, I'm sorry, and the right turn lane is coming in the other direction.
So your traffic can go, if you're coming from Benchmark, you can turn right into the subdivision. And if you're coming out of the subdivision, you can turn right onto Mine Road.
That's correct.
That doesn't provide for the traffic that's already on Mine Road heading towards Benchmark to. There is going to be a dedicated left lane? Okay. I was mistaken then. Okay, thank you.
Good question. Thanks.
Any other questions from the board?
Sir, may I ask a question?
Well, we've already closed out our public hearing time, sir.
No, well, it was about that.
Okay.
Well, if there's no other questions from the board, being in my district, whenever I look at any rezonings, I always try to see what is the upside for the county. Currently, there would be 13 by right homes that could be built there with no turn lanes, adding to the problem on Mine Road. Eventually, Mine Road will have to be widened, but there's always that pesky little thing of dollars, and there are no dollars to do it. So if we can work with developers to get fixes that the developer benefits and the county benefits, there's never any perfect rezoning, but there are better projects, and I think that this is a better project for the county than the by right use that is currently on the property. So with that, I would like to make the motion to approve.
Any other discussion? Call the question.
Six yes with Mr. Benton voting no. That's a different motion.
Next item is SUP 17004, Walton, Virginia LLC. This is a Rappahannock Electric Cooperative application in the Berkeley District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Floor computer, please. This is a request for a special use permit approval to construct and operate an electrical substation on approximately 4.6 acres of MU3 zoned property. The SUP area is part of a larger tract of land that's owned by Walton, Virginia LLC, and it was part of the large rezoning project recently approved known as Alexander's Crossing. The applicant is Rappahannock Electric Co-op, or REC, and they intend to acquire a portion of that property, 2.7 acres approximately, to construct the proposed substation. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on November 15th and did recommend approval unanimously with the conditions that were recommended and found the project in substantial accord with the comprehensive plan. Staff too recommends approval with the conditions and recommends the board adopt the attached approval resolution. The property is located on the west side of Massaponax Church Road, approximately 1,500 feet south of Hickory Hill Drive. The entire 33-acre tract of land is outlined in red and is what was included as part of that Alexander's Crossing rezoning. On the GDP for Alexander's Crossing, this portion of the property was designated on the GDP as open space. However, there was nothing approved with the proffers that would prohibit this use from developing on this portion of the property. The open space will have to be accounted for as the project develops. The SUP area is for 4.6 acres, which is located along the frontage of this tract of land here where the yellow star is. Surrounding the site, majority of it is vacant. That's the Alexander's Crossing project. And of course here on the east side of Massaponax Church Road and further to the north is mostly residential properties. With the closest residential property located right here, it's about 330 feet away. Here's another aerial without the parcel lines layer on. It's a little clearer image where you can see the details. There's an existing gravel drive here, and that is how this substation would be accessed. Also, of course, you have the transmission lines, which I think made this property the ideal location for the substation. The applicant did conduct a community meeting back in June. At that meeting, the citizens' concerns primarily related to the visual impact of the substation on Massaponax Church Road. Also, concerns about safety, noise, environmental impacts. You'll see shortly on the generalized development plan that the applicant did address the visibility concerns. Staff shared those visibility concerns. With respect to the noise, the applicant did explain that there is going to be an audible low hum sound from the facility, and that the Department of DEQ heavily regulates these facilities with respect to the environmental impacts. Here's the layout sheet from the GDP. Outlined in orange is the total SUP area, which is the 4.6 acres. The area shaded in blue is the 2.7 acres that REC will acquire. So this portion of the SUP, this is going to be the maintenance access area. It'll remain owned by Walton, Virginia. There'll be an access easement for the REC's use. As I mentioned, they will be utilizing this existing gravel drive. There will be improvements to it. It'll be widened to 18 feet and paved at the entrance, which meets VDOT standards. Also in conformance with proffers approved with Alexander's Crossing, they'll be dedicating 60 feet of right-of-way along the frontage, and that's been noted here on their GDP. The traffic impact for this use is minimal. REC, once it's been constructed, REC will have their maintenance and inspection staff coming to the site about once a month just to check the status of the operation. The site development along the frontage is going to include their stormwater management, this detention pond right here to the front. There is going to be an 8-foot barbed wire chain link fence which surrounds the entire substation, and that's highlighted with this bright green color. The eastern and southern length of the fence will include vinyl slats to provide for a solid screen to the facility. This angle is going to have the most visibility from Massaponax Church Road, so that's where they're going to have the vinyl slats within the fence. The area shaded in light green along the fence is a proposed evergreen landscaping intended to screen the substation. The screening provided and the slatted fencing is intended to address those concerns that staff and the community had expressed. The screenings will include evergreen tree species with a minimum height of 6 feet and evergreen shrubs with a minimum height of 4 feet at planting. Along the southern side of the property, where the access is, here shaded in green, this is a 30-foot tree save area, and it will be supplemented with evergreen infill with 6 feet at height at planting, and the number will be determined based during the site plan review process to make sure there's an appropriate screening within this tree save area as well. Within the fenced area is all of the electrical equipment, a utility shed, and a 75-foot lightning shield pole to be used solely for REC's internal communication. And the location of that pole is identified with the yellow circle. Findings in favor: this use is substantially in accord with the goals and policies identified in the comprehensive plan for the mixed-use land designation, and is appropriate located next to the existing transmission lines. The tree save area, the proposed mature landscaping to be installed, and the fencing, they significantly limit that visual impact from Massaponax Church Road. And the substation will provide a necessary electric utility services to the county. Findings against: the proposed substation will have a visual impact. The applicant has gone to a great extent to try to limit it, but to the extent possible, but there will be an impact from Massaponax Church Road. And also the installation of the substation along this segment of Massaponax Church Road will alter the character. You know, there is residential in that area, and so it will alter the character to an extent, with the closest residence, again, being about 330 feet away. The recommended conditions were the site would be developed in conformance with the generalized development plan we just reviewed, and that existing tree save area would be supplemented with additional evergreen infill to provide the appropriate screening. And those plantings would be 6 feet at planting, and the number would be determined at site plan stage. That concludes my presentation. Again, staff's recommending approval, as is the Planning Commission.
Anybody have any questions?
So one of the things that you're going to see an impact on Massaponax Church Road, and you said they'll be planted 6 feet high. Do we know what they're using to do the screening?
It's an evergreen tree. The specific species has not been identified.
Well, I'd recommend maybe the Leland cypress, which grows very well and wide as well. It grows large and probably not as many. I mean, it certainly will be, but the impact over 5, 6 years, especially within 10 years, will completely enclose that, I would think, what we have in our neighborhood. So I'm not sure how we could, how we proceed with something like that. I don't know why they won't give us if we're going to approve this tonight, I'd like to make sure that we get full screening there. That's my only objection to it. I know it's in your district, but you know, the Leland cypress is also native to this area. So you put any type of pine in there or something like that, it may not last. It has stress during the summer and stuff of that nature. So I'd just like to see it done right. That's all. I'm not against the project whatsoever, but I certainly would like to know what they're gonna put in there, and something that doesn't have to be maintained a lot. I mean, we've had a project here before where they put in some small 6-foots, and you can't even see they're there anymore because they don't maintain them. Once the summer comes up and all the weeds grow up into them. So I have a question for the applicant on that.
Are there any other questions? The applicant has 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and other members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Charlie Payne, the law firm Hersher Fleischer. Hopefully I haven't worn you out yet. Again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Mr. Sabula. Thank you for your service. I've enjoyed working with you, and I guess this will be my last meeting with you, so I want to thank you for that, and Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to you and your family. Appreciate staff's presentation. Hopefully my presentation will not be shocking to you, but this is, come on, I thought that was pretty good. Must be too late, You guys had a long day this evening. But you're all familiar, I'm sure, with this particular location. It's in a portion of what is Alexander's Crossing that was approved a few years ago. We have been working with Walton. Walton has actually agreed to convey the land at no cost for purposes of the substation for many reasons. One, obviously, to not only assist in the development of that particular project, but as many of you know, there are current capacity issues that we need to deal with today, and also future capacity issues at the hospital, the industrial park, at Germanna, et cetera. Having this substation in that particular area, especially with industrial uses close by, and all of this area, including the residential near us, is planned for mixed use, will help us attract users to the site, including expansion of the industrial site that's there, and data centers, quite honestly. They're always looking for a large electric utility asset, and this could be one of those as well that helps. So just keep that in mind as to what the future planning for this particular area is. Again, it's only utilizing about a little less than 5 acres of the 33-acre site. As I've stated, it is within the previously approved Alexander's Crossings development. It is currently zoned MU3, mixed use. It does require a special use permit because it is an electric substation. And it will include an electric substation on a gravel pad with about a 75-foot single lightning shield pole. And we will have, as staff had noted, screening with final slats on the east and south side, as well as tree buffering. And to Mr. Skinner's question, we are willing to mix that tree buffering, the tree types of trees that are in there, including Leland cypress and Virginia white pines and the evergreens. And the reason why we want to mix it is if you have one tree species in there and they get disease, they all die. So allowing the mix will allow us to keep that screen in good place. Surrounding us, as staff noted, north and south and west are all zoned MU3. To our east is zoned RU, and it's vacant, but it is planned for mixed use. Across from us, our properties, single-family residence, as staff had noted. All surrounding properties, as stated, will be mixed land use, and we are providing buffering and screening. No known cultural resources on this particular part of the property. The applicant does not believe the project will have any impact on the environment, and the staff had noted this is very highly regulated by DEQ, and there are no streams or wetland impacts. This project is consistent with the comprehensive plan and its goals. Again, it's in the mixed-use land category, and as I had stated, this will allow for not only addressing current capacity issues, but future growth in that particular area of the county, which I think would be a benefit to the county in attracting specifically commercial users. And it is within the primary development boundary. As you've seen, this is the GDP. To the east is a stormwater management facility, which is up against Massaponax Church Road there. You also see the screening that we have up against Massaponax Church Road. Access will be from Massaponax Church Road. We'll have a 20-foot private access gravel road that goes into the site. Probably looking at about 1 to 2 trips per month, and that's just for maintenance and to just check on the facilities. We do have on-site security cameras, et cetera, for security purposes. As you all know, this public facility improvement will have an impact on schools or parks. The applicant does not believe there will be any additional impacts to fire and rescue services, and it will be constructed obviously in accordance with county and state requirements. Fire and Rescue Station 11, which is about 2.8 miles away, will service the site. Transportation, as I stated earlier, access will be off of Massaponax Church Road pursuant to a private drive about 20 feet in width. Minimal traffic, as I had stated. The applicant will dedicate necessary right-of-way along Massaponax Church Road for the future expansion of that. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Charlie?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. McLaughlin.
Hey, just a quick one, so you know.
Go ahead. Yeah,
when this substation's built, is the zoning, or is it a higher tax rate paid on that piece of property, or is there an exemption for utilities?
We're already paying the higher tax. The property owner's already paying the higher tax rate because of the underlying zoning. But I don't do. You guys exempt?
No, we're not exempt.
No. Sam Wilson for Rappahannock Electric Co-op. He'll answer that question.
No, we pay personal property tax to any equipment that's in Spotsylvania County.
Okay, so there'll be personal property tax on top as well as the
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I hate to go over this, but, you know, we've had Leland cypress in our development for over 24 years. And we've had the pines and everything else actually get diseased and go down, but I've yet to see Leland cypress.
You want Leland cypress, you can have Leland cypress.
Well, the reason I say that is they grow at a very well.
I think that's fine. I think you're right, and I think we were just trying.
I think
to,
it'll cost you less because you get
Yep.
twice the coverage on a Leland cypress. It's pretty close, 15-foot growth to 30-foot diameter when fully grown out, and
I think we're agnostic as to what it would be. I think our concern was that typically, in our experience, when it's the same species of tree, one gets disease, they all go, and that's just our experience and what we do.
Well, fine, we'll work on it.
But we're agnostic to it. Will.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll open up the public hearing time now. Amy, has anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Is there anybody that did not sign up to speak that would like to speak this time about the substation? Close public hearing. Charlie, you've got 5 more minutes if you'd like it.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you very much for your service. Always enjoy being in Spotsylvania County and appreciate the job that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Charlie. And I will have to say, as my last official zoning act, I guess, to say, I will motion to approve.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to make, if you would, what we'd like to do is, you didn't proffer that, did you, as far as the tree goes? It was proffered as far as Leland cypress? Okay.
Well, Leland, the species has not been conditioned. The GDP is conditioned and the supplemental plantings are conditioned, but not the species.
Right.
So we can condition that.
Yes, if the board wants, Mr. Skinner can certainly propose a condition to impose, an inclusion of that species in the evergreen mix. I certainly have some language to do that if Gary would like to propose that to do. So I leave that to the board's or any individual member's motion.
I'm just looking out for the best of the county, and I think the Leland cypress is the way to go. And if you would include that in that, Leland cypress will be part of the mixed. Okay.
That is fine with us.
That's
We've
a
committed to
condition.
that, and that's a condition under the CUP, so we're okay with that condition.
Yeah, so the language essentially, and we'll, if approved, we'll include this in the resolution, essentially that the evergreen infill plantings shall include a mix of evergreen plantings and shall include, but not be limited to, Leland cypress.
Mr. Sabula, are you okay with that? With your motion?
Amen. It's very, the site is not obtrusive, and I think the Leland cypress will add to it. So therefore, that's my motion.
Thank you.
We'll call the question.
And the motion is, of course, with the recommended conditions.
Seven yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may have 1 second. During my board report, I was unable, because I didn't want to preempt the plaque to Mr. Sabula, but I did want to go on the record and just let him know how much I've appreciated working with him. I know how hard he's worked for the county, and I'm going to miss having him as my seatmate, but I wish him well, and I know that he will be part of endeavors in the future in the county. And also, Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you.
Chairman, if I could, please. We've failed to mention that tonight, Tuesday night, is the beginning of Hanukkah. We've mentioned Christmas season, but I did not want to leave anybody out and wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. And I would also ask you that this time of season, because of the PRTC meeting before our next meeting in January, last year we voted who would be on the VRE and the PRTC committee. So we would like to be able to do that so that Mr. Taylor could send those names up to PRTC.
So when do those committees meet?
The first Thursday of every month, so PRTC does that. And because PRTC approves them, VRE is under the PRTC, so that's why it has to go in.
Any thoughts from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would say whoever is currently serving, if they would like to continue serving, that would be fine with me.
It would be me too. Could we make a motion that it would be for the month of January, and then we'd have the full board make those?
We won't have a meeting before then.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Our meeting is...
We could approve this for the January meeting of the PRTC, 1 month. I'm okay with doing it. Is everybody?
We've done it every year so far.
Who's on it? You and Paul?
Well, it'd be Paul and I on the PRTC with
Not
you
the alternate?
and Tim as a backup. And
Okay.
for VRE, it would be myself with Paul as my backup.
Okay. All right, so did everybody hear what we're voting on? Okay. So I think I did. Did you make a motion, Chris?
I didn't, but I will.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to keep our members and reappoint them.
For the VRE and PRTC?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion? We'll call the question. I'm going to do ayes. Any nays? Okay, the ayes have it.
Thank you. Mark?
Okay, we're going to closed session. Is that right?
That's right, just one item.
This will be our resolution to adjourn into closed meeting. Whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn into closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, specifically regarding matters consolidated within the matter of NRE, LIBOR-based financial instruments antitrust litigation in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, MDL number 2262, and whereas pursuant to Virginia Code annotated section 2.23711A7, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors does hereby authorize discussion of the aforestated matters.
The ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
Has convened a closed meeting on this day pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.23712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now therefore be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors hereby returns to open meeting and certifies by roll call vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion to convene in a closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Mr. Yakubowski. Aye. Mr. Sebula.
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Benton.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner. And the chair's aye.
Motion adjourned.
Call the question. The ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.